the city-state Uruk in the far north, all the way beyond Balic's trading post Altaruk in the south, the great alluvian sand wastes stretch for hundreds of miles, their great dunes wider than even the ringing mountains that mark the edge of the known world. Over thousands of years, sand washed from foothills of the mountain canyons has accumulated in this vast desert. To cross the wasteland is certain death to those who are unprepared, and a daunting adventure even for the largest caravans and mightiest of individuals. Beneath the sand dunes lie the bones and the carcass of the old green world. Before defiling magic drained the life from the planet, forgotten cities, temples to the four elements, ancient tombs. These ruins now serve as hideouts for nomadic tribes, desert bandits, and the alien monsters that haunt the ravished world of Dark Sun. Rysar Rathmir. 15 years ago, you fled from the city of Tyr, giving up your ambitions there in search of a new way forward, a new destiny. Today, the late afternoon sky is bright, and beyond the sand dunes looms the massive dark sun in the horizon. The summer months are at their peak, and the heat is vicious, even in the shade of the looming palm trees that surround this small oasis that you're camped at. Welcome back, Toby.
Thank you very much, Dom. It's good to be back.
So, as we go back 15 years into the past, I'm interested in a few things. But first off, here in the encampment, just alone, no one with you, in the middle of the desert at this oasis, what do you think Rysar's state of mind is? Where's he at?
Rysar, it's a mixture of contemplation and doubt. He's been to Tyr and attempted to climb the ladders of power there, but received very short thrift from the local population and was quite shocked at this, believing he was destined for great things in the city. So now he has left with his head hung in shame and his tail tucked between his legs, and he is now searching, metaphorically and literally, for purpose. And he's not dressed in the usual praetor robes. He's very much in a very dusty, broken down, dirty, worn, almost ragged, elven rag costume. That being said, it's being elven and him being elven, it's good for the desert climate, so it covers the head, and he has a scarf through which to breathe in silt storms.
Does he look significantly different? Is there anything besides how he's dressed? If we were to look at Rysar then, look at Rysar now, do you imagine that there's a feature that's missing, or maybe something there then that's no longer there now?
I would say he looks both older and younger. Being an elf, he has a very long lifespan, if you just take into account natural death and aging. But he's in his 20s now, which is young for an elf. That being said, he's not well fed. He's had a very rough couple of years, perhaps. So I think he's looking older than his years, despite in some ways looking younger. So yes, and he's not looking sure of himself at all, as present day Rysar almost always does.
And so here in the oasis, with a little bit of shade from the palm trees, it's a slight find to find an oasis at just the right point that you're there during the peak of the sun. It takes a well-prepared group to try to fight through the hottest part of the day. Sometimes it's a lot easier to travel early in the morning and just after dusk when it's cooler. But part of the find, Rysar, for you is that as you left the road, looking to join the next road that would carry you deeper into the Tablelands and farther away from Tyr, you found this oasis. And within the palm trees that sort of circle the water, there's something else too that would have caught Rysar's eye. It's a monolith with 4 sides, square with a pointed top, sort of a pyramid reversed. And it's a red stone, and it appears to have some sort of writing on it or runes on it. It's blasted and covered a lot by sand. It may actually go deeper than it appears, but sand has accumulated so far. The top of this monolith, however, reaches all the way up just below the canopy of the palm trees.
Would that be red as in a sort of deep blood or ruby red, or would it be like sandstone? Or
Right now, it looks just sort of a little red underneath the sand, but if you were to brush it off and maybe get it wet and clean it a little bit, because it looks like it's been here a long time.
would I be able to do some sort of arcana check to see, or if the runes are written in Elvish or anything
Yeah,
that I might recognize?
go ahead and give me an Arcana check.
Yeah. I would say I'll brush it off, but I don't want to get exploded. That's an 11 on the dice, which I don't think's going to be great. Arcana. Oh, actually, no, that's all right. 17.
Okay. You do sense some latent magic, enchantment magic on this. It doesn't appear to be threatening. Like it doesn't make your stomach kind of curdle in the way that it does when you sense maybe a magical trap or something like that nearby. Um, the runes do look elvish, but because of the sand, you would have to find a way to clean them if you wanted to actually read them. And specifically, they look elvish, but there's slight changes to the runes. Imagine like trying to read cursive from 300 years ago, right?
Yeah. Shakespearean then. I will, if I may, take another glance around, make sure I'm by myself. And if we're at an oasis with palm trees, then I would like to use prestidigitation
Yeah. The clean
to
spell.
to sort of clean stuff off. But I'm not afraid to sort of dust off the bits closer to me. I'm more using it just as a get the bits I can't reach and aid in the effort.
Yeah, and it like goes from top to bottom and blows the sand off of this monolith, revealing that it was at one time a deeper crimson, like a very vibrant red, this stone. Um, and doing so, once it's cleaned off partially, you can read more of the runes. Everything that you're reading, it looks like a name, like just name after name after name after name, old elvish names.
Separate names.
Mm-hmm.
Do I recognize any of them, or any of the letters? Or
You can roll me a history check.
No, I don't think I reckon. It's an 8 on the dice, plus 4, so 12.
Yeah, none of them are familiar, and in fact, none of them are. None of them are.
Sorry, Cord.
None of them are in style either. These are names that none of the tribes that you've ever wandered with or met on your travels would have used any of these names.
Okay, but I understand at least some of the names. I can they're just sort of like Tommen or something.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Does it look like perhaps some sort of memorial?
I think that you could probably read into it that it's some sort of memorial with all of the names and the sort of reverent, the structure, the shape of it. That might be what it is. You do sense some sort of enchantment, but then everything else would say memorial.
Okay. Do I see any other structures or any other sort of sharp lines around me? Is there potentially ruins or other obelisks around near the oasis, or semi-buried under dunes or anything like that?
Roll me a perception check.
Let's get more than 8. Oh, 19 on the dice.
Okay.
Which will be 22.
So with a 22, you believe that this structure is probably much taller than what it appears to be. It's probably very largely buried in the sand. You don't see any other surrounding ruins or marks of ruins, but if this structure were particularly tall originally, it may stand to reason that either underneath of it or else somewhere nearby, buried somewhere, there could be other ruins. It's not unusual in Athas.
Okay. I wish to communicate with my familiar, if I may.
Absolutely.
Which I feel would be nestled in one of the palm trees, maybe eating dates or drinking some water from the oasis. And I would like to ask it politely to keep a watch out, because we're going to be staying here a while, I think. I take another glance around, make sure my tent is secure, and have a sip of water from the oasis. And then I want to start digging.
Okay. And you hear the scree, the sound, the cry from your Kistrekel's like sort of like a vulture, like a turkey vulture almost, but can fly quite well. And up in the canopy of the trees, it swoops down and drinks as you drink. And once you've kind of refastened the holdings of your tent to make sure that if a sandstorm blows through, it's just not going to knock your tent down, you take another look around. You don't see anybody nearby. There is a large dune that you had to climb up. It's larger on the other side than it is on this side, but it does kind of block your view of the northern area where the road ends. But you don't sense anything or hear anything. And when you go to start digging, I need you to roll me an intelligence saving throw.
Oh. And also, just in case this is you telling me I'm being an idiot, I'm not going to dig in the blazing hot sun. I'll be doing it for a bit, and then when the sun gets up, I'll rest. And then
Okay.
Right. Oh, I thought that was a 20 then.
So you wait to like
lucky
13.
for some. That's on the dice.
Okay.
And I have fantastic intelligence, so that's 17.
All right. So we'll say it's like close to sunset, right? It's not quite as hot. Like you've given it some time before you started your digging. And as you start to dig and start to excavate, a process which might take you days or weeks, you don't know how deep this goes. Your hand brushes across just for a moment some of that stone, and as it does, you feel psychic link. You feel connected to the stone. For a moment, you feel like you're inside the stone, and you see floating images, just flashes across your eye, like still pictures from a previous time. But with a 17, you have the ability to embrace or to pull away.
Yeah, it's actually a 19. I was looking at the wrong
19.
bit. But I have... Rysar's been searching for... He's so full of doubt of himself. He is... Half of him is searching for a sign, a message. And by golly, he thinks this is it. So I'm going to embrace it.
As you kind of move away from your own body, at least awareness moves away from your body, which is covered in sweat. Even in the evening, early evening, it's still so hot. You move to a place that's much cooler. You can feel a cool breeze on your skin. You see before you a vast plain of lush green grass, multicolored flowers just chaotically dotting the landscape in all directions. And the sun is bright, it's large, it's the same sun that you have now, but not quite so dark at its core. It's a little bit brighter. And as you sort of adjust to this plane and look around, you follow the breeze, you see what looks like lines, like long lines of elves dressed in strange, colorful clothing that's not really like anything that you've seen, not any of the styles you've seen, made of cloth and materials that are, not as common in your world. And they're wandering the plains, some of them in clumps. They look like families, perhaps. And then some of them armed, wearing strange metal armor, armor that looks unlike any that you've ever seen in your world. And you see them wandering through the fields. There's, without a doubt, something broken in their expression, something defeated. There's a sorrow. They don't look towards you, but they're walking towards you. And if you were to stand there and wait, people would begin to just pass by you on the left, on the right, continuing on.
Have I ever had an experience like this before? Like anything even remotely like it? I'm a diviner, so perhaps, maybe.
I think
don't
so,
know,
yeah.
but...
Yeah, because you have dreams. Some of them are dreams that you control, and some of them are dreams that control you in a way. They show you things before they happen. And so I think the experience overall might be familiar, but there's something so different about this place. I mean, you've never seen this much grass before. You've never seen, these are elves and that's your son, but everything's just a little bit different.
Do I feel like this may be the past?
That's a possibility.
Have I heard any stories of this world having had a sort of green past before or not?
Yeah, roll me a history check, and I'll tell you, we'll kind of figure out how much Rysar knows at this time.
So 12 on the dice, which is 16.
Yeah, so I mean, he's not, a great scholar, and there's not many scholars in the world of Dark Sun, but he has heard stories from elvish tribes that they've passed down through the generations. The stories vary tribe to tribe, the way that it does when oral storytelling is the way that people learn things. But many stories speak of a time where the world was green, where it was more peaceful world. And I think with that score, I think Rysar would have even heard multiple stories that would pin the change in the world at some point unknown how many years ago in history on the use of magic.
I assume I cannot interact with any of the figures, the elves.
You can roll me an intelligence saving throw if you want to try.
Okay. Oh, no, I can't. That's a 2 on the dice, which I think turns to an 8.
It's a weird sensation when you attempt it. It doesn't hurt necessarily, but it's very uncomfortable as you try to move your body. It's like you're glitching in this vision, like your arm's here and then it's here and then it's back here and then it's here. And as you're sort of stuck there trying to move between 2 points, the figures continue to move. And when you re-solidify, you basically turned around. So now you're facing the other way, and you see that this plane stretches up towards a group of rising mountains. And at the foothills of those mountains, you see a dark figure stepping into the sunlight at the top of the hill. It looks like a human, an older human with a fairly large and an unruly beard, wearing a blue robe with sharp pointed shoulders. Almost think like sci-fi, kind of angles to his clothes. He wields in his hand this golden rod topped with a gleaming crimson gem. And as he steps up to the top of the hill, he holds out his palm in the other hand, and fire or some sort of fiery energy begins to jump back and forth between palm and that gem again and again and again.
Do I feel like this is a sorcerer-king?
Has Rysar ever interacted? Has he ever experienced a sorcerer-king?
He has not met one personally, absolutely not. But he's been to Tyr, which has one. And he's been to, I think maybe he's been to maybe one other city briefly trading. But he's certainly never met one face to face.
Whether or not I think he doesn't recognize him as a sorcerer-king, but I think you would recognize his magic as defiling magic, because as you're watching this, you can see that the grass that's starting at the top of the hill and then spreading downward in an ever-growing ring is beginning to wither quickly, like a blight. And following that withering grass is an ever-growing ring of ash. You kind of feel nauseous in the pit of your stomach. And Rysar, you would know, because of who you are and what you do, that this is a clear indication of defiling magic, but it's not an unpracticed defiler who can create such a large effect.
Am I able to? Elves are keen sensed, which basically just means I'm proficient in perception. Am I able to sort of try and focus on this figure, see if there's anything I might recognize or any interesting details that I might want to know? Or yeah.
So you have advantage on perception checks, right?
Just proficient.
Proficient. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead and make me an investigation check. Let's call it, because you're trying to get something really specific.
I'm actually better at investigation. That's 19 with the mod.
Okay. Yeah, the hairline is very distinct because he's bald all the way around the top of his head, but he's got long flowing white hair from his back. He's got a mole on his cheek, on his left cheek, that's almost star-shaped. And it's only because this is a vision, and when you try, you can kind of move through it and then back through it. Like you're able to be next to him and then be back here a moment later. You see that star-shaped mole on his cheek, and the carvings on his golden rod that he has are of what languages does Rysar speak?
Common, Elven, and Giant.
Okay, so they're of a language that he does not know. Runes of a language he does not know. As you're sort of having this moment and you're zooming in, you take in these details, the sky turns dark and then it begins to glow orange, and fire begins to rain down from the sky. That withering grass pushes outward, and if you were to look behind yourself, you would see just ash and withered grass pulled up from the ground as far as the eye can see. In a moment, this wave passes through you, and even though it's a vision, you feel nauseous. The fire begins to rain down, and all of the elves that are just sort of wandering through, who have frozen for a moment when he appears at the hill, they begin to run in all directions. But the fire is raining down. You see parents like covering up their children with using their own bodies to protect them. And you see an elvish woman, a warrior, wearing this bronze metallic armor. It's sort of like a chainmail, wielding a metal long blade in the elvish fashion, but it's made of metal, is charging forward with her shield. And you see her use her shield to again push rocks that are falling from the sky and on the fire away to try to pull people out of the way. And you see her start to charge up this hill, and she's got this golden hair that sort of shines with the orange glow of the fire in the sky. And she's charging directly at this wizard on the hill, who seems to be very focused at this point. The gem is held between his two eyes, and he's chanting rapidly, like his mouth is just 1,000 miles a minute, chanting as he's casting the spell.
I mean, if I can get closer again, I sort of project myself to try and see the interaction, and if Rysar sees this as a vision, and he's although this is something new to him, he's kind of familiar with visions and knows that he can't really do anything. But he'll try and get close to the wizard if possible. He's feeling very helpless, and he wants to help the elves if possible, but he's almost certain he won't be able to. But he wants to be present and see what happens with the warrioress and the wizard.
For a moment, as you change your positioning again, it's like you're looking down this hill from the wizard's eyes. It's not that you have his thoughts, but you can feel his hatred as though it were your own hatred. And it's a hatred for all of these people. It's unadulterated. It's probably an emotion that Rysar has never felt to that extreme before. And this woman is charging up the hill. Her shield breaks as another fiery stone falls from the sky, and she casts it aside, and she wields her long blade in both hands. And you can hear her call up the hill to this wizard, "Albion, defiler, monster." And a moment later, there's a second explosion. She's drawing back her sword, and just a wave of heat passes from your body outward. Blinding light. When that light is gone, there are a few elves left, weeping in the ashes, but most of the bodies have been scorched to bone and charred. Their clothing, everything burned away. And it's like that sort of effect, Rysar, when, if you're looking at a time-lapse video, the sun falls quickly, bodies begin to move quickly, and you see in this vision several days pass in quick succession in the span of a minute. The elves gathering the dead, tending to the wounded, you see them build a tomb of crimson stone in the crater where the hill used to be. You see them build and craft from stone sarcophagus with the carvings of the faces. They take the time to make them look as lifelike and as beautiful as possible. And at last, the final person they lay to rest is that warrior woman, what's left of her body, in her armor, scorched, her sword held between her two hands. They put a crown on her charred skull. It's in the center of this tomb, and you see them place the lid over her sarcophagus, and you see them roll the stone over top to weight it down and close two massive stone doors to this circular tomb. You can hear the elvish song. It's the song of mourning. It's a song that you know. It's unchanged through the aeons. It's an ancient funeral song. And they sing it to the two moons of Athas, Ral, and Guthay. And for a moment you're there, and then you're back in the oasis. You're sweating profusely. The sun's only gone down a little bit further. It's still not quite sunset yet. And you're kind of snapped back to this place where the monolith is right in front of you. And you see your Kestrekel drinking water from the oasis, kind of turn to you and scree just a little bit and go back to drinking water.
Rysar will sort of fall back, even if the physical exertion isn't enough. He's quite overwhelmed emotionally by this experience, and he'll sort of rest in the sand for a few moments, look up at the obelisk, look at the names again, and go down to the water's edge next to his Kestrekel and splash himself, clean the sweat off, drink some more water. Then he'll go back to his tent. Not inside, just the opening of it. If there is an opening, I suppose it might be a sort of just a tarp kind of thing, canvas.
Imagine it probably does have a door that you have to tie closed to keep the sandstorms out, right?
Okay. And he'll wait for sundown, and then he will sing the elven song of mourning himself as the sun goes below the horizon.
Rysar, as you finish the first verse of the Song of Mourning, there's just a slightly cooler breeze, and the sand kicks up a little bit, and you hear beyond that dune, that close dune that you had to travel over to find this oasis, the sounds of fighting.
I stop singing immediately, and I walk into my familiar and immediately take off and fly up into the sky. And I want to look around for the source of this.
All right. As your Kestrekel flies up above the canopy and into the air, let's go to the other side of the dune and catch up with what's happening there. So the road to Tyr is well-traveled, but old and not well kept. Long stretches of road are often covered by sandstorms, and in the late afternoon sun, two beasts called Enix cross the hot sand left by the recent storm. Now, the Onyx is a large lizard about the size of a small elephant, with 4 legs, razor-sharp clawed feet, and a long tail that sticks out behind its brown-scaled body. Atop each of these 2 Onyx is a small fort, a fort crafted from bone, canvas, and white silks that provide shelter and shade to its riders. Within one of the forts sits a young half-giant wearing a white, loose-fitting toga. Gulag has seen 2 days worth of stubble on his face, and his long black hair is tied up into a loose braid. At his side rests a cudgel that's made of granite and wrapped in lizard leather. Gulag snaps a whip and drives his onyx further into the desert. Behind him is perched Intak, a tall thri-kreen. Thri-kreen's a mantis-like humanoid with 4 arms. Intak wears a series of circular edged weapons on each of his 4 arms, bronze chakrams that could almost pass as oversized bracelets. In the back of the second Onyx lounges Taruk, a massive and muscular Terry, a ratkin. He's dressed in fancy purple silks that only partially cover his fur and large muscles. He's drinking wine from a horn. The side hangs an iron hand axe and an ornately scimitar. It's carved from black obsidian. So Taruk's sort of lounging in the back of this second fort as it's rocking and the Onyx is moving forward. It's sort of sighs with contentment and looks to the rider. Welcome to Dark Sun, Bill.
Happy to be here.
So why don't you tell us, buddy, a little bit about who you're playing today, what they look like right now as they're riding this Onyx across the desert.
Well, I'm playing Horson. He is a mole, which in Dark Sun is a half dwarf. So you have the height and the adaptability of a human with the girth of a dwarf. Now, how moles are made, humans and dwarves don't normally like each other very much. So this is like the forced bringing together of humans and dwarves to make this like race of superior bipedal beings. So his skin is darkened by the sun, and he's about 6'8.5", very tall, but average for a mole. Just thick of stature and posture perfect. He's in mount on this creature. He doesn't get out much, so he's taking in all of the sights. He's kind of breathing the air out here to see how it's different, and realizing there's not as much fecal matter as there is in the cities, or at least not on the surface. And he's in this situation along for the ride.
You're riding the Onyx forward and rocking in this little fort. It mostly keeps the sun out of your face, but every once in a while, as you go over a little dune, it hits you, kind of blinds you for a second. It's much hotter here than it is in the city of Balic. You don't have the same comforts. Even when you fought, you had some comforts. Here, it's a lot harder, but the 3 people that you're with, all ex-champion gladiators, Taruk, Intak, and Gulag, they have this certain camaraderie, and they have this certain ease that says, it's okay, we're going to get through the desert, this is going to be fine. They don't seem perturbed by any of the hardships, even when a sandstorm passes by and you have to get within your forts and tie them down, and like everything is rocking, sand is blowing inside. None of that has seemed to bother them. But today, near the end of the day, it's sunny and clear skies, hot, but bright. And you're right, there is something about the smell here, something better than in Balic. And as you're sort of going over this dune, waiting to find the next road, Taruk calls up to you from the back where he's lounging, and he says, I should have asked you before, Horson. What do you plan to do the first night we're in Tyr?
Well, I'd like to watch some fights. Always something to learn, you know.
That's what you're going to do the first night? But that's work. What are you going to do for fun?
I don't know. What's there to do for fun in Tyr?
Well, there's always gambling, plenty of that, especially if you can find a good game on the outskirts of the city. There's large estates there where the nobles host grand tournaments and games. Plenty of good food and drink. Perhaps it's all the time I've spent in Balic, but I do think the food always tastes better in Tyr.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll grab a bite to eat then. But I do want to see those fights. I want to understand what kind of stock they're working with.
Are you going to place any bets on the fights?
I might. It's more along the lines of study, form, style, placement, speed, things I might be able to adopt.
I can promise you this, we might find some promising young recruits that want to earn an honest amount of money for their hard work. But the Tyr gladiators have nothing on the training of the Balic gladiators.
That's good to hear, but I want to move this art form forward as a whole. So if we can bring in new stock, if we can learn something new, something that others ain't doing, I feel like we might have an edge.
You know, I heard an interesting rumor about you, Horson.
Yeah?
There's something about you wanting to start your own school, a gladiator school, a fighting school. Is that true?
Well, I tossed it around, yeah. I like teaching. You know, even my sparring partners, when they do something wrong, I want to correct them. It makes me feel like I'm, I don't know, making a difference.
He stands up from where he's leaning and like grabs onto the post so he doesn't tip over as the fort rocks. He brings his horns half full of wine up to the front where you're riding, and he offers it over to you.
Yeah, what's in there?
Balic wine? True wine? Have you ever had any?
Don't believe I have.
Try it. Curious to know what you'll think.
And then he kind of grabs it awkwardly, unsure of how to socially drink fine things. He grabs it with like both hands just to not spill a drop, even though they're on like a moving thing, and kind of puts his lips. Oh, it kind of burns at first, but it's not bad.
I know. Let me ask you this, and I don't want to pry too much because your life is your life, and you're a capable fighter. I've watched you fight many times. But why get invested? Why start a school and get attached to your students when most of them are just going to die in the criterion, no matter what you teach them?
Well, as you and I both know, if you're good, you won't die. How old were you when you stopped fighting?
His usually rat smiley face gets a little dour for a moment. His long nose and whiskers kind of twitch slightly. He says, I don't know how old I am, and I don't count the years. I don't find it pleasant to think about those things. But I fought for a long time, and I can tell you this, my friend. Yes, if you're good, you can survive. But only if you're the best. And only a few can ever be the best at one time.
Yeah. And that's where I want to leave my mark. I want to be the best. I want to teach the best. Otherwise, what's the point?
You know you're going to need a lot of money to get House Jarko to agree to let you start a school.
How much money?
Oh, I've never done the math myself, friend, but a lot. I mean, just think, you'll have to buy the space, the teachers, the equipment. You'll have to pay for the injuries. I mean, we're talking a massive undertaking. Where are you going to acquire that sort of coin?
Well, I was hoping to earn it, but I can talk to some of the other gladiators and see if they share a similar dream. It's a pipe dream. I'd like to. I'd really like to. I'm not the best with money.
Well, that's why you need investors and partners. The right people, all sharing the responsibilities. Maybe it's more than a pipe dream. You know, soon House Jarko will appoint a new representative in Balic. I intend to put my name forward. I believe that anyone who leads House Jarko should have fought and bled in the Criterion. They should know what it means to hear the cries of the people, what the people desire, and to care even for those who will inevitably die. If you were to help support my name, as I put it forth, perhaps it might be easier to find the funding you require.
Horson kind of like sits back and like props a fist up on his thigh, relaxes, smiles. Yeah, that's what I like. I like that. Ambitious. But also, I agree. No one should lead House Jarko that can't fight, never fought, doesn't understand all that goes into it.
I'm glad we see.
Who's your opposition?
Who knows? They'll probably send someone from some other city, some bureaucrat who lives on an olive estate or some other fancy place. That's how these things usually go. But we could change that. I might not be known as a popular person in Balic, but the gladiators trust me, and the moles trust you. You were a champion in your time, especially with the younger crowd. Together, well, I could win, and we could make the city a better place for the gladiators and everyone else, too.
I like that. Is there anything else that you would want of me other than to get the moles and gladiators in support?
Oh, no, not yet. I'm sure we can figure out the contract and the details at a later time. For now, just enjoy your travel to Tyr. Enjoy the city, the differences, what's the same, and keep your eye on the dunes.
Yeah. What's there?
He points with his chin and his long whiskered nose ahead, and you see it a moment before the cry goes out. The other Enix that's being ridden by Gulag and with Untak in the back, it's coming up over the top of a dune, and as it does, you see these 6 figures, not mounted, but scurrying and springing like 10, 15 feet with every spring, wielding spears. You would recognize them, I think, probably from your time in the arena, because I'm sure you fought them before. These are Gith. So Gith are a race of humanoids with features that sort of look like a cross between elves. They have like long pointed ears, but more reptilian skin. They're extremely gaunt and lanky. They have long, gangling arms and spindly legs. Their hands usually have 3 fingers, sometimes 4 fingers, no opposable thumb. They are able to use the tools and wield weapons despite their lack of an opposable thumb. And all of these Gith are wielding spears, crafted from either bone or wood. Both their fingers and their toes end in sharp claws, and they're pretty tall. If a Gith were to stand all the way straight up, it might be like 7 or 8 feet tall, but usually they're hunched over and their shoulders are slumped forward, and they move with long swinging steps, their arms swinging back and forth, and then they leap. They move and they leap. And just a moment before you hear Gulag bellow out an alarm, you see these creatures with the spears, and they are about to attack the Enix and the fort ahead of you.
Claws, balls. You see that?
Yes, that's why I pointed to it. Come on, my friend, let's have some fun.
All right. All right, let's rope.
So we're going to enter into combat, and Bill, the way that we do combat with a house rule here is we use active initiative. So I decide narratively who's going to start combat, and then they have their turn and they choose who to pass it to next. And once everybody has had a turn, we start back over with the next round. I'm going to go ahead and give it to you here to start off with. You are currently riding an Enix. Now imagine like this is a flat-backed, long, like think like sort of like a crocodile, at least in its shape, but it's much larger than a crocodile. And you're in a rocking fort on its back. The other Enix ahead of you is maybe like 60 feet ahead of you. And they're being swarmed by 3 Gith from either side.
Yeah, so Horson's going to take a second, like a bonus action, and he's going to adjust his purple bandana and posture, flex his erectors and posture up, physically changing his demeanor and kind of developing a combat persona. And he's going to utilize the Persona Libre ability, which will allow him to engage different point systems to spend on Moxie and enhancing his combat abilities.
Perfect. And in layman's terms, like your classes, you're playing a pugilist,
Yeah.
right? So these are, similar to like Monk's key points. These are resources that you can spend.
Yeah, but dirtier.
But dirtier. Okay, so tell me, Bill, you have the ability as the writer to spend your movement to try to move the Enix closer, or you can abandon your fort and jump down and you can charge in on foot.
I'm going to ride the Enix closer to the scene.
Okay. Make me an animal handling check.
Oh, cool. Something that I am an expert in. It's a 19.
Okay. So yeah, you're able to, Enix gets to use its full movement to go exactly where you want it to. Are you trying to pull up right behind the other Enix, or are you trying to get to the side? What's your approach here?
I want to get to the side so at least I can deal with one side at a time.
Yeah.
So instead of facing all 6 at once, I want to focus on the 3 towards the right side.
All right, and so the Enix kind of like lowers on its haunches a little bit and begins to take shorter, faster steps through the sand, its winding body moving up this little dune. And the 3 Gith that are on your side, they all turn towards you as they see you storm up on the back of this Enix, and they ready their spears. Are you doing anything else with your turn?
All right. So I'm assuming the animal movement counts for my movement. How close am I? How close is
You're like, you imagine you're like 10 feet up in the air.
Okay. I do want to dismount the Enix and then use a dash action to get closer to the fray.
Sure, yeah. So you describe how you dismount from this fort on the Enix's back and charge in.
So as it's kind of like there's a slow shifting, and then he opts to stop it, and he just stands up and kind of searches for the closest point between like him and the ground, like the shortest amount of distance, and just straight up jumps out and lands both feet in the sand, trying to make like a tripod, like a superhero pose, so he doesn't lose his balance, and then rises up and then doesn't sprint into combat, but like slowly walks. He takes his time.
All right. That the end of your turn?
Yep.
Okay. So it'll be the Gith's turn now, and we'll do the 3 that are on your side. One of them grabs their bone spear, lowers down, and then leaps off of their long legs directly towards the face of the Enix, driving the spear towards the creature itself. And they stab it into the neck. You can see as they pull their spear out that a little bit of blood squirts out of the open wound, and the Enix like starts swinging its head back and forth. The other 2 charge you, and they're running at first hunched over, and then they split, like they're side by side, and then they move further, wider apart, and then they both leap at once at you through the air, driving their spears downward at you. That one's going to be an 11 to hit your armor class.
That is a miss.
All right. And that one is going to be a 16 to hit your armor class.
That does hit.
All right. So I think like describe how you blocked the first one.
So as the first one comes in like an aerial moment, he ducks out of the way and shoves the opponent forward, and as he's doing that, the second one comes in and the spear jabs him in the trap, just slices through some of the meat that's right there, that engages something in him. He gets pissed.
So you'll take 5 piercing damage as the second one bounces, jumps twice, and it's that second jump when it jabs upwards that's actually able to catch you on your shoulder, on your trap. At the same time, the other 3 Enix on the other side all charge towards the Enix being driven by Gulag, and they all attack the beast. All right, so 2 of them will hit. And the other creature, like it doesn't topple over, but the fort on top of it, as they drive their spears into its side, begins to rock. And you can see like Gulag, he's a half giant, and he is huge, who's the driver, like he is grabbing onto the base of this fort to keep from falling and spilling out of it the moment. From the back of the Enix, Ntak, the Thrycreen, steps forth, swinging back and forth, and he's got those chakram wrapped like bracelets around his arm. He pulls the sharp-edged weapons off, and he spins 2 through the air to attack one of the Gith that are stabbing at the side of his mount. All right. And Taruk, who's in the back of your Enix, takes the reins that you let go and tries to steady the beast. Like he spends his turn basically trying to make sure that it doesn't run off. He takes control of it. The two chakrams spin through the air from Untak, and they slice one of the creatures in two. It takes him off at the arms and like at his midsection, and he topples over into the sand, and then the two chakrams spin back and he catches them again in two of his hands. It's your turn. At the same time, we're going to bring in Toby here in just a second. Toby, I think as your Kestrekel flies overhead, you miss this first round of combat, but you're going to see the second round of combat, and we'll bring you in at the end of this round. Bill, it's your turn.
All right, so he just got his trap got sliced. There's blood everywhere. He like looks at it, and it's like if you ever saw a pretty person get a cut on their face, and then he's just like, shouldn't have done that. And then he's going to his first strike. He's going to square up with the one that struck him and toss a jab. And that's a 20.
Yeah, that'll be a hit.
And that's 12 bludgeoning.
So that is more hit points than this creature has. You can describe exactly what happens.
So he's expecting to square up and kind of have a back and forth, and he wants to learn about how they do things. So he squares up in sort of like an initiation of an exercise. So he tosses in the prodding jab to see how he responds, and this creature just gets decked with the jab and blacks out and falls into the sand. And then he looks down at the unconscious being. Well, I was expecting a fight. And then he turns over to the next one and then uses the cross that he's been loading with that jab to attack the one that missed him.
Okay.
And that's a not good. That is a 1.
Oh no. That is a natural 1. I don't have any fancy like natural 1 your hand falls off kind of rules, but it is a miss. So the first one cracks the creature, and right before you punch him, he squeals something in a high-pitched voice in a foreign language. I don't think it's a language that you would know. You don't know Gith, right?
Mm-mm.
He squeals something at you in a foreign language, and a moment later you pop him and he goes down. The second the cross that comes across your body towards the other Gith, he hunches over, gets low, and spins his spear, and the bone catches your hand as it's coming across, and it locks you up so that he's like gripping you for the moment, and you're gripping him, and you're very, very close. You can smell his breath, which smells strangely like onions in your face.
That's unique. And so now, because one of the features of the pugilism class is called fisticuffs, and I can use a bonus action for another unarmed strike. So
It's like your flurry of blows, yeah.
Right. So there's that. That's 2 strikes. I spend a moxie point for that. This one is just like if I were wielding 2 weapons, the bonus attack for the offhand attack.
Gotcha.
So,
cool.
With the cross getting caught up with the positioning with this spear, he's going to take his free hand and uppercut through the mass of limbs and try to land something right in his torso.
All right, go for it.
That's 20. That's good. That's a 26.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, 26. If you were surprised, it does it. It hits him.
And that's 11 bludgeoning.
And that is his exact number of hit points. So describe what happens here.
So when he misses with the cross, he misses bad. You see in like his eyes that it's like, should have done better. And then as he comes in with the uppercut to the torso of this thing, you can hear the internal, upon connection, you hear the internal organs move around, and the framework of this entity crack and just slumps to the ground immediately after. And then he points at the third one on this side, and gives one of these.
As you beckon him forward, he looks between his two fallen companions and grits his teeth at you and says something in that same foreign language. Roll me an insight check.
All right.
Spear, and he does a faint jab to your left and then a faint jab to your right, and then he rushes, his body swinging directly at you, trying to keep his center of gravity low so that he can crash into you and thrust forward. That's going to be a 19.
Oh yeah, that's good.
All right. 9 piercing damage.
Ooh, buddy.
So that's a little bit heftier. I imagine, like, as he drives it through you, I don't want to say it like impales you, but it does go into your stomach. Like, it does break the skin, and then he pulls it away and whips it around his head like he's about to attack again. His allies who are attacking the other beasts, the other Onyx, you can hear them chittering, speaking to each other rapidly. You can't really make them out from your side. Two of them strike. The two remaining strike again, and as they do, they drive their spears into the Onyx side on the other side, and the Onyx does finally tip over, and you can see Gulag, who. He's a very muscular half giant, but he's got some meat on his bones, right? He's not. I imagine that Horson's probably like trained, right? Like he has a low body to fat ratio, whereas Gulag's just a large human being. You can see all of him go flying through the air. There's kind of like a dumb expression on his face as he's caught off guard by this, and he crashes into the ground, probably about 10 feet away from you. At the same time, Ntak scrambles out of the top and leaps off. Mantis, the Thrycreen, can also spring, a lot like the Gith. As a matter of fact, they can spring, they can jump even further. He jumps off the top of his own fort and lands in the sand on the other side behind those two Gith. Taruk is very comfortable on top of your Onyx. He's just keeping it steady, and he's even got his horn of wine in one hand. He even manages to take a sip of it as he's kind of watching you fight down below. Before it's your turn again, I want to pass it off to Toby. Toby, Rysar, you're witnessing this from overhead through your Kestrekel's eyes, and you have a turn here. You can do things. You can communicate. What would you like to do?
Well, when I started hearing the commotion and then witnessing the initial flurry, I was concerned. But there were 6. Can I see there's, or were at least 6 Gith in total?
There were 6. This Maul, barely clothed, barely armored Maul, has just killed 2 of them, or at least defeated 2 of them, and another one got cut in half by a pair of flashing metal weapons that flew out of a fort and then swirled around and came back into the fort.
Yeah, I would like my Kestrekel to make a loud sort of screech, as loud as they can, really, and then just maybe fly around. They're not particularly combat effective, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, they do have stat block. They can attack, but they're basically a bird of prey. They're not. Yeah. They're just a bird.
Yeah. Are the Gith on top of anyone? Is anyone in trouble, like in the first caravan, or?
The Maul has just gotten thrust pretty bad by one of the Gith that he's faced off against. I imagine that the wound is there's at least some blood there.
I would like the Kestrekel to fly down and try and rake the back of the Gith that is attacking the Mole. There is one still attacking the Mole?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Even if it's just sort of distracting it.
Sure. Do you want to, like, this is kind of like a help action, we can say?
Yeah, sure. Or, yeah, hindering the gift, but whichever, yeah.
Yeah, I think the way we'll play it is like we'll give
Advantage.
Horson an advantage on one of his actions on his turn. So yeah, anything else you want to do on your turn? Is Rysar staying put in his body? Is he staying put at the oasis?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Bill, you see this screeching Castrecal, which again is sort of like a vulture, a little larger, fly down out of the sky and begins to rake the back of this gift's neck. And it's like trying to push it off. It swings at it, uses the haft of its spear, kind of like a bludgeoning weapon. But it manages to pull back away, and it's distracted for a moment. It's your turn.
So after getting shanked in the stomach, and like it was a hit, and then the spear gets pulled out, and there's kind of blood, and he kind of touches it, and he looks up at the blood on his fingers, and looks at this entity, and goes, "Do you know how many sit-ups I had to do?" And then launches with a like a supercharged cross. So like the force is going across his body, and he's not caring about technique. His anger is getting the best of him, and just doing this straight in an attempt to break through any sort of attacks or defense that he might be putting on.
All right, go for it.
That's a 20.
A 20 is a hit.
All right, that's 11 bludgeon.
And that, again, is their exact number of hit points. So you can describe what happens here.
So this thing's got to be feeling pretty good about itself. He just saw me kill two of his friends, potentially family, and in their in a revenge state, he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna stab this guy for my people." And he stabs me with a spear, and thinking he's got a chance. And then he sees the blood on my fingers, and then the look in Horson's eye, and as Horson steps forward and launches the cross directly into what would be his face area, he holds up his spear to kind of block the incoming blow, but the fist goes through the spear and connects directly with this thing's face. And almost like you ever watch like a slow motion video where it's like you see the contact point, and then this thing's head contorts around Horson's fist for just a moment and then goes down. So whatever organic matter was floating around up here has been jostled severely. And after that attack, he's not going to worry about their bodies. He's going to quickly make haste to where the other ones are.
Yeah, and you still have your movement, so you're able to cross that path. You see that Ntak has landed on the other side of these creatures, and you're coming to their back right now. And Ntak has the chakrams wrapped around his arms. They have like leather grips on the inside so that he can hold them on his arms and pull them off if he needs to use them and throw them. But he also has a large, it's basically a great sword crafted from like a very, very heavy obsidian. And he pulls that out and he pulls it over his head. So he's like pulled this massive sword. He's wielding it because it has a double length hilt, and all four of his arms over his head, ready to strike. And they're kind of distracted with him for the moment. So there are two of them, and you can run up and attack them if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's shit, yeah, let's go. So are there any dead on that side?
There's one that Ntak's chakrams like cut in half.
Mm-hmm. And then there's two other ones. So I'm going to, the one whose back is facing me, who's not expecting the hit.
Perfect.
And run up behind, kind of do like a baseball pitch thing where he goes back on one foot, shifts all of his weight forward, and tosses another cross.
All right.
26. Man,
Yeah, your dice are
killing
great
it.
tonight, man. Yeah, 26 does it.
Okay. 7 bludgeon.
So you crash into his back. You hear something crack beneath the weight of your blow, and he goes straight. So Gither have curved spines. They don't stand up straight usually. He goes up straight and snaps up from the force of your blow and starts to turn around, swinging his spear with him. Do you have anything else you want to do on your turn?
If with the attacks, and if I didn't use my bonus action yet this turn with all the movement, I can still use a bonus action to, as he's coming around, I hit him. Horson hits him square in the back. He starts to turn around, and as he turns around, Horson would have the hook from the opposing side coming to connect at the exact right time, and we'll see how that works out here in a moment. 25.
Yeah, 25 hits.
6
rolling.
bludgeon.
18, 19, 18, 19. The 6 is enough to finish him. So his head whips around after your first blow, like he's about to counterattack you, and your fist is already there. He runs into your fist almost, and he goes down with a crack. His body hits the sand hard. And the other one now is like looking around and notices that you and Untak are 2-on-1 versus him, and all of his allies are dead. Is there anything else you want to do on your turn?
After he lands that hook, he's going to stand up, cross his arms, smile, and look at Gulag. And my number's 4. Where are you at?
Gulag is the half giant who's like fallen out of he's like flown through the air and is in the sand. And I think his head comes up out of the sand at that moment. He like spits sand out of his mouth and he says, I was distracted. And he slowly starts to rise.
And that's how I'll end it.
All right. And we'll say, like, you can make an opportunity attack if you want. This Gith is going to try to run. He's not going to keep trying to fight you. He turns his back to you and sprints off towards the dune.
Yeah, I'm going to take an opportunity attack. Abso-freaking-lutely. Let me jab that. That'll have the most reach. 21.
21 hits.
Okay. Eight bludgeon.
You catch him. And like almost knock him out, but he's still stumbling forward and starts to spring away. And let's see if it's Gulag or Untak who manages to hit. We'll do Untak first because he is a mantis and is faster. It is okay. So he has swashbuckler, so we'll say we're gonna do a bite attack. Okay. Untak like gets low on his 2 legs and leaps through the air. It's a single leap. He leaps ahead of this creature as it's running away to where it's running to, and as he falls on top of him, he uses the flat of his greatsword to push him down into the sand, and he pulls his face up, and his mandibles, Untak's mandibles, clack several times, and then he buries his mandibles in the back of this man's neck. You're not sure if he's dead or not, but Untak rises a second later, chewing a little bit of something. And the Kestrekel, Toby, you're still flying around, like you've pulled back after helping. You witnessed all of this. We're out of combat right now. Is there anything Rysar wants to do as everyone else kind of gathers up? They're going to have to repack all of their goods onto the one Inix that can still ride. It's going to be a much less comfortable fit, and I think Taruk's already starting to complain about it.
The Kestrekel will make another loud screech and sort of slowly start flying up, and then I want to be able to get a view over my side of the dune as it's doing a circle, just to make sure that there's not any more Gith sneaking up on
up on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, roll me a perception check. And at this
God.
point, like the sun is starting to set, and you just let me know what your roll is because I have the Kestrekel stats here.
Oh, 16 on the dice.
Okay. So that's an 18 for perception. So with an 18, you don't see any gith. It's actually pretty clear. There's a sandstorm pretty far away, maybe to the south. You're not sure if it would blow this way or not. Usually the storms tend to come from the north and move to the south, but not always. But no other gith. As a matter of fact, when you do a full circle, it looks like these were the only ones. You can even with an 18 make out some of their tracks as they came up over the dune. But the sun is starting to set, and you know that evening is going to be here in, maybe an hour at most. It's starting to get cooler, but you don't see any of their caravans. It's just this group here that survived the attack on the other side of the dune, and you down in the oasis.
And where the gift came from, there's no sign of more.
Not anywhere nearby. They might have come from, I think Rysar would know this, being an elf and traveling a lot. They might have come from a makeshift camp that either from like a ruin that they took over or from a cave that they've occupied for a time. They could be part of a larger group somewhere, but nothing you see anywhere near.
How far, as the Kestrekel flies, are they from me?
Oh, let's say, I don't know. They're on the other side of the dunes, so 600 feet, maybe.
Okay, quite a while. Are they the angle they're going? Do I think they know that the oasis is here? Were they aiming for it, or would they pass it by naturally?
It looks like they were traveling in the opposite direction that you were. They just haven't gone over this dune.
Okay, so I want the Kestrekel to screech again and then sort of come down and land in front of the mole wherever he is. And then screech again.
So what's Horson doing right now as the Kestrekel lands and screeches?
Horson's looking over and making a concerted attempt to gloat over the sheer number, since he's worried about this crew because he has to prove himself. He's the least accomplished of this crew, so he would like his notoriety and wants to impress these people. So he's putting effort into being kind of cocky and with a sneer, kind of nodding, looking at all the corpses around him. And he just makes noises and like he's confused. Like, it's not attacking. Does it want something?
And then I want the Streckle to sort of like quite pointedly just hop on, and they don't just walk around in front of people at all. Like, it would keep well out of the way. So I want it to sort of just hop on the spot quite pointedly towards where the oasis is and I am, and then just start sort of hopping or walking or whatever it would do on the sand towards me.
So I imagine that like this Kestrekel hops up this dune, Bill, this other dune that you weren't traveling towards. So it's sort of out of the way just a little bit. It hops up to the top, and then it gives like a birdie look over its shoulder back at you, and then looks back and continues to go over the dune and disappears.
Can I tell if there's like a sense of urgency? Is this like, oh, Lassie, did a kid fall in the well?
I mean, if the Kestrekel was as I don't know, as good at communicating as a dog, maybe not, who knows? But I mean, it's just a big turkey vulture hopping over a dune.
Yeah. I think Gulag comes up to you like while you're watching this happen and like looks at you and then looks at the bird and then looks back at you and he says, that's weird.
You think there's something over there?
I don't know.
Wouldn't hurt. We're already down one giant lizard mule. So let's check it out. Someone could need some assistance.
I think at that point the Kastrekel has taken flight and sort of just comes back down quite unexpectedly. And,
Oh, there it is again. All right, well, all right, show us the way, little friend.
And then it will just soar up and duck out of sight back down to where I am. And I'll send you a little message, I think, Dom.
Okay. Yeah, send me a secret message. I think Gulag looks over to Tarek and Intak, who've just finished repacking the surviving Inix, and he says, hey, boss, little strange bird, I think, wants us to follow it into the desert. Probably a trap of some kind. I'm going to go. And he just starts to lumber off towards the dune.
Horson's going to follow.
You hear a sigh from behind you from Taruk, who whips at the Inix so that it gets moving, and the Inix starts to move with the fort and Intak and Taruk over its back, and they're behind you as the two of you cross over this dune. Bill, you see down below as the sun is setting and the light is turning pink and red in the sky, pretty stunning oasis. It's got a circle of palm trees around it. It's a large lake of what looks like mostly clean water. And there's a tent there by the water's side that looks like it's been staked properly and recently. And I guess you would probably see the Kastrekel, maybe even Rysar. Toby, what would they see from you as they come over the dune and look down into the camp?
So Rysar has taken this time to compose himself in preparation to receive the guests, but he's also trying to do an old elven trick which he learned off the shaman of the village, which was first impressions count for a lot. So he's sitting facing towards the oasis, not directly towards where he knows the people will be coming from at all, and looking quite like a mysterious mystic staring into the water. And the Kastrekel is just drinking some water out of the oasis 10 feet away from him or something. And occasionally the Kastrekel will sort of look over his shoulder, so Rysar knows how close they are. And when they come over the bluff and maybe 40, 50 foot away or something, he'll just say, without looking around, "I've been expecting you."
That definitely seems to spook Gulag out, and he hangs back. I think Horson's probably closest.
He'll furrow his brow a little bit. Well, I'll be a Phalar's ass. What are you doing out here? And can I discern anything visually about this character?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to do like a insight or a perception or something.
Yeah, you could do an insight or perception. Insight being more like how they're presenting themselves, and perception being more like physical things.
And you're telling me athletics won't work in this situation? Okay. That's a solid 5 on perception.
This is a wizened shaman of the silt seas.
He tries to draw a connection. Is that bird yours?
I mean, I think the Kastrekel just looks at it, sort of cocks its head a bit. Just goes back to drinking.
What'd you call us over here for? Wise and shaman at a silt sea.
You are travelling. You have lost a beast of burden. There is water here. You are welcome. Join me. You may wish to stop for the night.
I'm not the one in charge, but I'll relay the information. What's your name?
Rysar Ruathamir.
Can I discern anything about like the nature of the name?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. You can roll me a history check.
And you're telling me I can't use athletics for this? That's a real strong 5.
Real strong. No, then I mean you've heard a lot of names in your life, and a lot of them are weird.
Mm-hmm. So, would there be any obvious physical things to indicate to me like what race this character is?
I think at the moment, probably not. Humanoid. Maybe tall. But because of the clothing and the angle, and that he's not standing, the voice sounds like mine, probably male. Maybe not. I don't have the bulging muscles of a mole, and I'm certainly not a dwarf. Maybe a human, an elf, something like that. Dressed in rags, but desert rags, dusty, sandy, with you can probably see there's a mask covering my face.
Thank you for the invitation. I'll pass it along. Do you need help?
I do not, but tell your masters a storm is coming.
All right. Thanks for the information. And I don't know how far they are behind me.
Yeah, I think Gulag's like standing right behind you, just kind of scratching his head and watching this interaction, scratching the stubble on his face and listening and trying to decide for himself whether or not he trusts this individual. From the look of skepticism on his face, he doesn't. But behind the two of you, the Annex has come over the dune and is approaching the ring of palm trees, and it stops, and Taruk climbs out over the edge of the fort and drops down into the sand. Ntak takes the reins of the Annex, and Taruk is just sort of swaggering forward towards the tent and the rest of you.
Orson will meet Tarek, relay the information that he had received, and then gesture to Rysar. This is Rysar. Rysar Taruk.
I think
Taruk,
at that...
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say at that moment, Rysar would turn. I don't know what the custom is. If it would be etiquette to stand, then he would. But if it's not a cultural thing amongst desert tribes, then he would stay seated.
So Taruk is a large Terry. I mean, the largest Terry I'm certain that Rysar's ever seen. And he doesn't look tribal or nomadic. He's dressed in fine, if slightly dirty and sandy, silk robes, mostly purples and blues. He does have a leather belt around his waist, and you can see that on one hip is sheathed an iron axe, like a dark iron axe, like a hand axe, and on the other is sheathed an obsidian scimitar. So he looks far wealthier than, the sort of the rat folk who wander the desert. And he's got a lot more confidence in his steps too. He's kind of just stepping up to you, and whether or not it's custom in general, his greeting to you is like this swaggering two-handed bow where he leans over and spreads his arms out wide and then stands up and kind of looks down his whiskers at you and says, "Risa, pleasure to meet you."
I think with that, Rysar he'll get to his feet, and he's graceful as an elf, which becomes apparent, and also very tall. He's 7 foot tall, and he'll stand up slowly with some effort. It feels as though he's tired from some exertions, and the sand's falling off his robes as he stands. Did Taruk say his name? Sorry, I know his name, but did he actually tell me?
I don't think he did, but Orson did.
Orson told me Taruk's name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Taruk, you are welcome at this oasis. The storm is coming. It may hit, it may not. You are welcome to stay here as long as you wish.
He smiles and looks at the Kastrekel that I think is drinking again, right? And then looks back to you and he says, "Well, thank you for bringing us here. I must admit, there's no chance we would have found this surprising so close to the road. Very, very interesting." And as he speaks, his gaze kind of moves around your encampment, the palm trees. He looks at the crimson monolith, that stone structure between the trees, and then back to you and smiles, and he says, "Why do you trust us, Rysar? We could be anybody."
I didn't say I trusted you. I said I was expecting you.
I see. And what were you expecting us to do?
The future is a weave. There are many paths that we can take. What you do, what you don't do, that is for you to decide, for me to decide, for this mole to decide, for the desert to decide. What do you wish to do?
Well, to be honest, I just lost one of my 2 traveling beasts. The rest of the ride to Tyr is going to be much more uncomfortable, me sharing that space with my friends here, all of whom are very large and very smelly. So I would like to take the night off and relax. Would you mind if we stayed here by the water for the night?
Of course not. I would welcome you as my guests, but this is not my house. This is merely a old resting place of my people, and a temporary resting place for myself. But yes, you are welcome, as far as I'm concerned.
Roll me an insight check, Toby.
Oh, I thought it was a 1, but it's a 7 on the dice, which is, I think, 9. No, 8.
Okay. He breathes, he sighs. You're not sure what it means. Then he says, "Oh, I had thought perhaps you were a druid and this was your oasis. Well, if you're simply a traveler as we are, then I'm happy to share it with you and allow you to stay as well.
You are too kind.
Don't mind us. We're going to get set up for the night. You're welcome to share some of our drinks, some of our food. Which way were you traveling, Raisa?
I was travelling to here. Where I go from here is yet to be revealed to me.
Sure, that makes complete sense to me. He gives you like a smile that hangs on his face for a few seconds too many, and then he looks over to Horson and he says, my friend, would you mind speaking with me in private for just a moment?
Yeah. Let's go.
Taruk, before you go, I would warn your men, do not touch the obelisk. It is warded by ancient magics.
I think at that moment, Gulag, the half giant, has wandered over to the obelisk and is like looking up and down. He's got like his large hand out ready to touch it, and he pulls it back and he looks over his shoulder at you and scratches his face and shrugs his shoulders and says, well, thanks for the warning. You always want to... It just... Who put it there, anyhow? Makes you wonder.
A long, long time ago.
Find some strange things in the desert. Sometimes fun, sometimes not. And he starts to lumber away from the monolith back towards the Enix. And Taruk steps back towards the beast and kind of waits for Horson to come over for a second.
He'll look at Rysar and kind of awkwardly bow with like permission to leave the conversation, and then he throws his hands up in the air. He's like, I really do fucking it. And then walk over to Taruk.
He does that sort of like cross the arms huddle thing where he turns his body into you so he can kind of speak quieter. And he says, I've got to admit, I'm very impressed with what you did back there. I mean, I've seen you fight before, but you had a little extra fire in you.
Yeah, something about not being in the city, just exciting, you know? You don't know how things are going to react when you hit them real hard.
I prefer the city myself, where I know exactly how things are going to react when I hit them. But I understand. Let me ask you this. My emotional energy is depleted for the evening. I'm going to have to pay for a new Enix now, and I'm not looking forward to the travel to Tyr and all the way back. I must admit my night is a little ruined. I would like to relax and enjoy myself, but our new friend, Rysar, I think it might be wise to get to know him better. I don't know what he's capable of, or if he could stand on his own 2 feet in a fight. But he wanders the desert alone, and he is not dead. Would you like to do a little recruiting tonight?
Yeah, well, I already found out some stuff, so get ready. He's a mystic of the silts or some such, is what he told me.
I don't even know what that means.
I don't know either.
It's a mystic of the... Never heard of that. Well, see if you can find out some more, perhaps, and, make friends. Maybe you'll find out something useful. And if he wants to come with us to Tyr, he's welcome. If he wants to come to Balic, well, we can always put him up until we return.
All right. Quick thought. So the thing that died back there, can we salvage some of its parts to help reduce the cost of buying another?
Well, that's the problem. We could take the time to cut it up. We could eat. We could take its scales. But we're already overcrowded, and we're going to have to use that single Inix now to travel all the way to Tyr. And if we can't purchase another, then how are we going to get any of our gladiators back to Balic? It's a mess, if you ask me. I'd sooner just leave it there to rot.
All right, you're cool. But I think cutting costs where we can might be good.
I like the way you think. If you feel compelled, so be it. Just please, don't stack it on top of any of my things.
So you want me to stack it on top of Gulak's things?
Yeah, he won't mind.
Yeah. Gotcha. And then he turns around and then approaches Rysar.
Rysar is going to sort of just put a hand up as he approaches. You wish to recruit me?
Well, that's one of our objectives.
Tyr, Balic. I have never been to Balic.
I'd say it's not bad, but I haven't been anywhere else, so I can't compare it to any other city. Well,
Personally, I do not like Tyr, but it is a city, and if you have not been, it is good to go.
what you don't like about it?
I was looking for something there which was not there. It holds little for me.
Well, Tyrix says it holds plenty of good times, some fun games, gambling. I'm not a big fan of that. I like to know exactly what I'm spending my money on. Shoot. So, what were you looking for that you couldn't find?
My destiny.
That's not something you can just pick up off the ground and buy at a shop.
No, quite. You're a gladiator?
Yeah. That's my destiny, I guess. It found me.
I suppose death is all our destinies.
At some point, but between now and then, we can have a little fun.
What are you going to do about this dead beast of burden?
Just trying to harvest some parts. It's got some hard shells in some places. Some folks might buy some scales, meat. We can cook that meat, but we just don't have the space. Have you fought before? Are you a fighter?
I am. And he looks, and as you sort of look down in front of him, or slightly behind him now, there's an elven longbow and long blade lied on the sand, almost sort of ceremonially. I am able to defend myself physically if necessary, but I rarely find the need.
And you don't prefer it. So, when confronted with a fight or flight situation, you would choose
I am not usually confronted with a fight or flight situation. Perhaps I'm lucky.
Perhaps. Feel like you can tell a lot about a person, how they fight, if they fight, why they fight. A really short amount of time, actually. Beats a whole bunch of conversation, I'll tell you that for sure.
I prefer conversation, personally. But combat certainly has its place. For you more than me, I feel.
Been doing it my whole life, so. Oh, hope I didn't mess that one up.
Oh.
Did you intend to come to this oasis, or did you stop here on accident?
I intended to find this place, though I did not know this was the place I was meant to find. Forgive me, I do not mean to speak in riddles, but I've been wandering a while, and I see things which are hard to describe.
No harm, no foul. If you don't mind me asking, don't mean to come across as rude, but what is that thing you came for? Points at the obelisk.
It's my destiny.
That tall rock.
Somehow it is linked, yes.
Okay. You don't know how yet.
It's a paving stone in the path, I'm certain.
And does it signify something, or is it just like for decoration?
For
See,
me,
a lot of rich people do some really stupid shit with stones.
yes, quite. Don, is it in Tyr where there's the multicolored pyramid?
The ziggurat of
Yeah.
Tyr. It's like at the far end, and at this time so 15 years ago, it probably will only be a few tiers high.
Okay.
At this point in history, like they haven't finished it or even come close to finishing it, but it is all the talk in Tyr because it's like half of the population or more is working on this singular object, the singular building for the sorcerer-king of Tyr.
Billy, I can't remember. Did your character tell me his name?
I can't remember if I did either.
I'm not sure if you actually introduced it. I don't think you did. It is fitting you say that when on the road to Tyr, for a construction is being built, much to the chagrin of the population. A ziggurat, a pyramid of such awesome size that it is taking up most of the workforce of the city. So, yes, rich people do often do funny things with their money and building. This obelisk is, for me, it is hard to describe personally. However, it is a monument, a memorial to fallen elves of a past time.
Did you know him?
No, it was long ago. I don't know how long, but a long, long time ago.
It's always sad to see people die, I guess, but after a while you just kind of get used to it.
There's a loud curse from the other side of the oasis as Gulag has accidentally hammered his hand as he's setting up the tent. He's shaking his hand. The rest of them are getting set up on the other side. And at this point in the evening, the sun finally dips down beyond the horizon and the dunes and the purples and the reds of the evening sky and begin to transform into that hue of twilight, that purple. It's only going to get darker and darker. It's starting to get cooler, a little bit more bearable. But nighttime is coming, and Ntak is already working to start a fire using wood that you've packed. As you've seen it along the way, he's starting to build a fire pit on the other side. I will say at this point too, as we're moving to night, if you need to take a short rest to restore any of your hit points, spend hit dice, abilities, you've had long enough now to do so.
I'm gonna restore as many as I can.
Okay. How many hit dice are you spending?
Let's go with let's do 3.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna roll those out.
Yeah, go ahead and roll for it.
18.
Yeah, that's a good roll. Okay, so yeah, you restore 18 hit points. And I think like as your conversation's going on, they've basically set up the camp on the other side of the oasis. It's opposite of Rysar's tent. They're starting to bring out some meat to roast over their fire. They've got spits that they quickly set up so that they can turn the meat. It's nothing fancy, but it is very efficient. And this is a thing that they've done many, many times as the two of you are conversing. Was there anything else you wanted to say to each other? Anything else you wanted to do?
As they're prepping like the spit for the cooking and things, he'll look over to Rysar. Have you ever had wine?
I have, yes.
Well, I can't guarantee nothing, but if you get in with Taruk, he's got a very nice red liquid that he calls wine. It is at first not so tasty, but it gets tasty shortly thereafter. I'm not an expert, but
That is very kind of you. Friend, what is your name?
You can call me Horson. But
Awesome.
yeah, that's it. Just Horson. I'm trying to work on a nickname, but the trouble with that is you can't really choose it. It's something that gets chosen for you. So tossing around a couple things, but for now it's awesome.
Awesome. That's a good name. Strong.
Yeah, thanks.
That's good.
If it's any equal compliment, Rysar sounds like an exotic bird.
I sort of glance at the Kastrekal, which is weirdly just standing in the same spot. Has been for quite a while. It's Elven. It means rain or era.
Can I insight check that?
Yeah, absolutely. This will be versus Rysar's passive deception, so 10 plus your deception bonus. Or if it's true, then it's passive persuasion. Yeah.
Yeah, it's no lie.
And then
unless you get a 1, and then it's definitely a lie.
Then you're just confused. Yeah. What did you end up with, Bill?
I rolled a 9 on that one.
Yeah. You
So
certainly
I think,
don't. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have any reason to think that he's lying.
Well, I don't know what my name means. I'm pretty sure it's just two sounds jumbled up together.
The way you were attacking those Gith, it's a fitting name. It sounds like horse, a powerful animal. Although, I don't think that's your fighter nickname.
No, they're not. It's not really a fighter beast.
Don, are horses in Black Sun? Dark Sun?
No.
Ignore what I said. Yes, a horus. It's a very rare desert creature.
Oh yeah.
Toby.
Still fresh. I mean, I'm new to nature, I guess. I'm more of a city bird. And then he'll kind of gesture to the spit, and then he'll say, "Come drink," but he'll say it in Elvish,
Oh.
and then smirk.
I say back in Elvish. You speak my people's tongue.
And then he'll say, also in Elvish, "I do know some people." And the Elvish is broken, but you get it's enough. You understand what he's attempting to convey.
I switch back to common. Most excellent, Horson. You are full of surprises, and I don't often get surprised. I would very much like to accompany you and converse more.
And then he'll gesture with his hands. It's like, "After you," to the camp.
Yeah, Rysar's sort of stands up, starts walking past and in front of Horson, and then there's a sort of screech, and the Streckle will sort of fly up and just start circling above, and it just knows to warn me if anyone's about to jump me. That's to Dom,
Fair.
not to
Rysar, roll me an intelligence saving throw.
Oh, okay. That's a natural one.
Oh, no. Are you using anything? Are you changing it?
Oh. I mean, do I feel anything? Do I feel like I'm mentally attacked or something, or do I?
As you start to move towards the other side of the camp, towards the spit.
Oh, you know what I am going to do, actually. Sorry. I have a spell, Don. And
Oh, okay.
yeah. Oh, no. Spy's recovery, but it's only after Dex, Wisdom, or Charisma ability check. Oh, and it's an ability check, not a saving throw. So, yeah. No, I would have no reason to.
Okay. So, let's roll this. Rysar, as you're walking back towards the spit on the other side of the camp where Taruk is sitting down and drinking wine, and Gulag has this small clay wind instrument that's much too small for his hands as he's taking out and blowing into and starting to play music actually fairly well despite how large his hands are. And Untak, the Thrycreen, is just standing guard, his long obsidian sword just kind of thrust into the sand. He's just watching out as the stars are rising and the two moons of Athas, Ral and Guthay, rise over the horizon and begin to shine down their light into this oasis. And that you're crossing to the other side, and you feel that feeling in the pit of your stomach. It's that same feeling you felt when you were having the vision and you felt that wave of defiling magic pass through you in the vision. It's a feeling that makes you want to retch. And you do take 2 necrotic damage.
Nice. See, this is actually something Rysar would embrace and take into himself. So I'm pleased I failed. Don. Let me just record that. And I'll sort of fall down onto one knee, and he's not trying to sort of stay up and look, oh, I could take it or anything. It's very much collapsing onto the floor, onto a knee and a hand, and coughing up into the sand. And it looks like he's sort of almost starting to have a vision or a seizure of some sort.
Horson would look at him, kind of be affected by something, has no idea what. But, you all right? Did you trip?
Right, so he's got a bit of sweat, I imagine, maybe, and was sort of come to. Does it? Do I sort of get a sense of being back there at all, or is?
Roll me.
Is it just,
let's go. Let's call it Arcana check.
Okay. I think that's 11.
You don't feel like you are being pulled back into a vision. You don't feel the sensation or the images flashing across your eyes, but you feel like your life force has been pulled out of you, like a part of you has been pulled out to feed something else, and you're not sure what it is.
I look to the obelisk. Is there anything like... I assume there's nothing obvious, like the runes aren't glowing or anything like that. Or do I feel like maybe it was being funneled there, or maybe... Do I feel like, as a defiler myself, do I feel like there was a direction that this was coming from? Or was it inside me, or...
Yeah, when you look towards the obelisk, you see some of the runes light up. And unlike the obelisk itself, which is a crimson light, when they light up, it's this blue glow. And when one of the runes lights up, roll me a perception check.
It's not great. 8. It's terrible.
Yeah, so you don't find the you don't see a pattern in what's happening, but as you sort of gather your strength, and Horson, you would see this too, as would a moment later Taruk and all of the others. The obelisk begins to light up, several runes at a time, on different sides, at different heights, all over the place. And as it does, there's what looks like shadows stretching from the bottom of the obelisk out to the palm trees, and they wrap around the palm trees. And after a few of these runes have lit up, you see spectral shapes that catch under the moonlight, lack of color, but dressed in strange clothes and armor that do not belong to your world, or have not belonged to your world in a long time. And these ghostly figures that are beginning to appear at the edges of the palm trees of the oasis, they are all elves. Every single one of them is unmistakably an elf.
I say to Horson, almost in a sort of close to catatonic state, do you see them? Do you see them?
Does Horson see them?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and without going into anything further, he kind of sticks his fingers into his mouth and issues a wolf whistle of alarm to his comrades setting up the camp.
You see like Taruk stand up, not move forward, but look over, and his eyes kind of quirk. You can see the fur that stretches over his eyes wrinkle upward. Gulag stands up and brushes hands together and squints over, and his eyes kind of go wide with surprise. Untak just kind of glances over, keeps his sword thrust into the ground, and his mandibles click several times. And all of you see an image that Untak sends you, because Thrycreen communicate oftentimes completely with images or emotions. They don't say a lot. They can speak, but they don't say a lot. And you see what looks like Untak with several other Thrycreen in a cave. Untak somehow looks younger. He doesn't have the scars and the missing chunks of chitin in his armor that he does now. But you see him inside a dark cave with writing on all of the walls, and you see shapes, these spectral shapes, come out of the writing, come out of the runes, and swirl around the cave. And that image flashes in your mind. And then Untak just simply says out loud, "Phantoms. Phantoms cannot harm you."
Well, that's a relief. You have any idea what's causing this? Right, sir?
John, do I feel like they are the sort of ghost spectres of the fallen elves that I saw?
I mean, they do. They're dressed the same way. Maybe you even see a face that you remember specifically. I remember that face amongst the crowd from your vision. And there's more and more of them too. Like as you're having this conversation, more of those runes are lighting up and more shadows are stretching outward and transforming into these spectral phantoms. They sort of hover like an inch above the sand. Some of them take each other's hands, some of them interact silently, and some of them begin to wander off away from the oasis.
Yes. Awesome. They are the elves who fell, which this memorial stands for. They're dead.
Are they playing out memories, or is this things they are doing in the afterlife? Their afterlife?
Don, was Dark Sun elven mythology afterlife? Yeah.
I mean, there are no gods.
There's no
in
gods,
Dark
yeah.
Side. Yeah, the clerics worship, if there are clerics, they're either miracle workers. If they worship anything, they worship the elements themselves, the elemental planes themselves. So it's not atheism. Any kind of religion is a small sect of people. There's no widespread popular religion. So you do have cults, but it's basically a godless world.
So there's no concept of an afterlife or anything like that?
For your tribal at this point in history, no. Maybe there used to be, right? And it could be up to you too with your tribe, since you kind of created your tribe. If you believe, like maybe they believe like elves return to a green world, or they could have their own personal belief.
I do not know, Orson. I believe there is some kind of magic here. Perhaps. holding them. But I do not know. I want to call out to the closest spectre, if I can, Dom, in Elven, and say, do you hear me?
I'll say it's like a young boy who's holding maybe his mother's hand or a family member's hand. And all the specters now that most of the names on the obelisk lit up have gathered. I mean, at this point, it is, dozens of these specters. Gulag and Taruk have drawn their weapons and they've kind of circled up just warily, like they're not advancing, they're just kind of watching and ready. Because these specters are not approaching them or the oasis. As the more of them appear, they begin to wander off. Rysar kind of reminds you of that line that you saw in the vision, that just sort of broken spirited line of elves walking through the grassy plain. Now it's a desert and they're walking away from the oasis. But that boy, young elven boy, I think with very, very light blonde hair, looks back over his shoulder at you and he just raises a finger to his lips and then lowers it.
I'm not a genius, but I think he told us to shut up.
This is not right. There is a powerful evil here. Don, and this is a bit of a reach, but in my mind, I almost feel like the human sorcerer is putting his power on the image, the boy, to sort of be, don't interrupt this, rather than it being the boy itself. I can't do some sort of insight check or something like that. Like when I was inside the sorcerer, like I know it's a bit like complex.
Yeah, of course you can. Give me an insight check.
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was an 18, but it's a 12 on the dice, which is, I think, 13, because I have +1 insight. Yeah.
Okay.
13.
With a 13, it's not that you can be inside him and feel what he feels, but you do get the sense after a moment, because it's chilling, right, when a ghost does this to you. Yeah. But after thinking about it for a moment, when he turns and kind of walks off, there's something of a light step. Even though he's hovering, he's still stepping, right? And there's something light and bouncy about his movements. You think that he's eager for wherever he's going, and he's at the back of this line of ghostly elves that are now walking over a sand dune and deeper into the desert. Some of them are disappearing out of your view, especially because with the only light being the moons, Ral and Guthay, reflecting off of the sand, it's not easy to see far any longer.
I mean, dare I say, for an elf, it's pretty easy, but as we're quite good at seeing in the dark.
I think you can see to where they go over a dune, and then they go down the other side. You don't see them pass there. You don't know if like they disappear when they get to the dune or if they keep walking.
How well can I see better than my Kastrekel in the dark?
Kastrekels actually see really well in the dark.
Okay. The thing is, okay, I want to try and get to the... How far is the top of the dune that's sort of blocking the view?
Yeah, I think like 300 feet is what we said.
Oh, never mind that. I'll send the Kastrekel up. Because also right. I feel like there's going to be some necrotic fire rain going down, so I don't really want to go closer to it. But I want to send my Kastrekel up.
What does Rysar look like when he goes into his Kastrekel, right? Because with you right there is Horson.
Okay, so Horson, I don't know if you've ever seen a spellcaster with a familiar before.
No and no.
So Rysar would just sort of like stand for a second and then sort of his back will arch back and he'll sort of look up. And it's very much Game of Thrones warging, basically. His eyes will sort of roll into the back of his head and he'll sort of almost look as though he's just a bit in sort of spasm, sort of arched and tense muscles, and it feels like he's not there. I mean, he is there, he's standing there, but he doesn't seem aware of his surroundings. But then the Kastrekel just like looks up and just jumps up and starts soaring into the sky from where it's been standing for ages.
And as the Kastrekel circles around before we return to Horse and Riser on the ground, it can see further in the distance, and it's strange, Rysar. What you see under the lights of the moon is a canyon where there wasn't a canyon before. It looks like that scarred canyon that used to be a hill before the defiling magic exploded in this region. You saw this in your vision, and you see the canyon now, and you see the building, that stone spherical building that the elves built. But unlike the spectral elves, the building itself is all too real. Your Kastrekel can see it. It has physical form. And you see the spectral elves walk one by one through a pair of crimson doors revealed in the moon's light. The massive doors are carved with the sigils of the four para-elementals, the element of silt, the element of magma, the element of the sun, and the element of the rain. And beyond the great doors, that large circular tomb crafted from the same red brick stone as the doors themselves. And before the doors, two statues depicting two elvish women, warriors, armed with long blades and wearing metal armor that hasn't been seen on Athas in a very, very long time. Your Kastrekel spies this line of ghosts, of phantoms, walking through those doors in that tomb. It sees the two statues. It sees all of this as it circles around.
Now, what was the building? Have I seen that spot of land with my or the Kastrekel's eyes before?
You absolutely have, and it was not there in the daylight.
Okay, but the building feels, it looks completely real, solid.
It looks solid.
How far away, roughly?
Less than a mile. You could travel there fairly easily.
The Kastrekel is going to just dive back down towards me and then sort of at the last minute sort of pull up and then land on how large are they? Can it land on my shoulder, or would that like
it absolutely can. It
Yeah.
can land on your shoulder, on your arm. It is large, right? It's not comfortable to have a Kastrekel, but imagine, about the size of a vulture, a little larger.
Yeah. It's going to land on my shoulder, and as it does, my sort of like eyes come back into my sockets the way they're supposed to be.
And your eyes open to Horson.
Yeah.
Your back got all weird, and your eyes were. That was some weird shit you just did.
Orson, I'm going. I need to go. And I go to sort of almost frantically sort of pick up my long blade, go back to my tent and pick up my long blade and my bow, and that's basically it. I don't. I leave the tent standing up. Then I look at Horson again, and there's something I need to see. you're welcome to come or not. It's up to you.
He looks back at the rest of the crew. What's the rest of the crew doing in regards to these specters and the spit they had just set up?
Once the last of the specters, which is the boy and maybe his mother, climb over the dune and are no longer visible, they like sheath their swords. Like Gulag sits back down and kind of shakes his head and starts playing that clay wind instrument again. Taruk returns to drinking, and Ntak continues to watch. He's usually the lookout for the group.
He'll look to Rysar. Give me 1 second. I'd like to go with you. And then go over to the crew and ask for like a I don't know what they're using as like a water skin. And he would ask like Taruk if he could put some wine in there. Not a lot, just a little.
Is this the last wine you're ever going to drink?
Oh, it's not for me.
Oh,
you told me to recruit, right?
Yes, but I have a feeling that you're intending to do something reckless.
Well, what in the world will make you guess that?
I have good instincts. And he says, as he's getting out a water skin, he empties out the water, knowing perhaps that he can just refill it at the oasis. And he begins to fill it with some wine. And he's a little stingy at first, and then he thinks about it and wriggles his ratty nose and adds some more to it, caps it, and holds it up for you. And he says, make sure he owes you one if both of you make it out of this with your skin intact.
Well, that's dark. And he'll take the skin, and then he'll look over at Ntak and kind of like gesture. If you can, keep an eye on me.
Ntak, hunter. Ntak, fighter. Ntak, not. Hunt phantoms.
All right. Well, that's not what I was asking. He rips off a piece of the cloth that's wrapped around his forearms. If I don't come back, come find me then, and hand it to him.
He takes it in his thry-cream kind of claws and looks back at you, and his mandibles clack several times. His head tilts to the side. It's always hard to tell what he's thinking or feeling, but there's just a flash momentarily, a psionic image he sends you to your mind. And it's a moment with the two of you shortly after you had sort of finished your gladiatorial career, been pronounced a champion of the city. The two of you on the docks, on the harbor of Balic, looking out over the Silt Sea, watching the skimmers, the ships, sail out away from the city into the sunset. And it's just this beautiful moment. And Ntak's hand in that memory, this memory of the two of you, reaches over very slowly and just sort of pats your shoulder. His claw gives you a little squeeze. And then the image, the memory ends. He clacks his mandibles again.
And then, not knowing how it's reciprocated, Horson is going to think in his head of a very small, cute, adorable creature that he can repay that kind memory with.
He tilts his head back the other way and just turns away from you, like without saying anything, and just like looks out towards the sands, the dunes, on guard.
And then he'll take the skin and walk over to Rysar and like flap the skin against his chest. Got you a swig for the road.
Huh. Thank you, Horson. You are full of surprises.
Not on purpose.
Let's go. And Rysar will just sort of start running, not sprinting, but in the elven sort of run state. And I suppose if it's only a mile, it's not really enough to need to induce it, but that sort of purposeful, steady, melodic loping through the sands towards his goal. And he's assuming horseness is
Fine.
yeah, there with him.
It's hard to keep up with an elf. Like once they get going in the deserts, like they can just they hit, like he said, it's like a trance. And then they just keep going and they just keep running. They can run from city to city without having to rest too much. And you're right, I don't think a mile is probably not enough to get up to your top speed, like your top continuous speed. But Horson can keep up pretty well. I think you do leave him behind a bit, but he always keeps you barely in view in the distance. And it's not far as you reach this circular tomb. Once you get there, Rysar, none of the ghosts are there any longer. The doors of the tomb have opened. You can't see anything from here on the inside, but you do notice now that you're closer that the two statues of the warrior women on the outside, they have gems in their eyes, 4 different colored gems in their eyes.
I stop 35 foot away. Or 31.
Yeah.
Over 30 foot away. And I stand in awe. So the statues are made of metal, or they're stone with metal armor, or
They're stone depictions of elves wearing the same metal armor you saw in your vision.
Okay, so it's not actual metal armor on the statues.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. I speak in Elven, and I say to the how tall are the statues?
They're slightly slightly taller than you, but similar proportions. Either elves used to be a little bit taller than elves are now, or these are just slightly oversized.
I say, and this will be a bit bonkers, but I say in Elven, may I enter? To the statues.
The statues don't answer themselves. The moonlight's glinting off of the gems in their eyes, but they don't say anything. There's a little bit of sand that swirls outside of that open door to the tomb and then swirls back in.
I just slowly start walking towards the entrance of the door. And Rysar is very much thinks that he's being called. So he's looking for any sort of symbolism or anything. If he thinks the sand is sort of maybe blowing into the doorway, he'll take that as an invitation.
Rysar, you ever stop to maybe think about this more than once? Perhaps this might be a trap? I mean, I don't see you asking too many questions. I'm kind of curious. These statue things are pretty weird. Just looking at me all weird like with the shiny eyes.
I must go in. Awesome.
Is there like a pull in your body? How's it feel?
How large is the building, Don?
So it's a circular building, and imagine maybe diameter 150 feet. It's not huge, but it's not a shack. And the doors are two tall stone doors that have swung open to the inside. This close, you can see that there are rays of moonlight coming down through star-shaped holes in the domed roof of the room inside. It's one great chamber, and these rays of moonlight are crisscrossing in eerie patterns through those holes and touching the floor down below. That's providing some illumination within.
I look back at Orson. I must go in. And then I sort of do a strange sort of movement with my hands and then sort of flick at my eyes. And it looks like I'm flicking sand in my eyes. But as it comes away, as I'm looking sort of directly at you, Orson, my eyes seem to turn into the desert night. It's sort of like starlight and a darkness with stars shining out. And then I turn back and I'm casting detect magic, Don.
Okay.
Dramatically.
Yeah. And I think that the same stars, and only you can see this, Horson can't see this, but the same stars that appear in your eyes, they appear in the center of the chamber, and with the crisscrossing illumination, you can see a little bit more from the doorway. There's ancient layers of sand and silt that cover the ground within, and sarcophagi line the walls, each individual stone tomb carved with the long since faded face of those individuals who presumably lie within. And in the center of the chamber lies the most ornate of the sarcophagi, perfectly lit by reverent rays of moonlight. It's something you've seen before. You saw it in your vision. The lid of the red stone sarcophagus is carved with a sort of statuesque figure that's reminiscent of that regal female elf who charged up the hill to face that wizard. And as you cast Detect Magic, those sparkles, those star sparkles, kind of, you see them just kind of floating over the top of that sarcophagus in the center of the room.
I start to continue where I left off with the elven song of morning. And I just slowly step through between the statues and into the temple building.
Horson, what do you do as you see Rysar enter?
While singing.
While singing.
I don't know much about elves, but singing sad songs while walking into a place isn't very promising. And he'll kind of skeptically keep looking around and follow him in.
Rysar, as you walk into the chamber and you sing the song, it happens slowly. You can hear the muffled voices of other individuals singing the song. They sound like they're within the sarcophagus, the sarcophagi over here, and then another voice over here, and slowly it builds this chorus that fills this echoing chamber, this tomb, with an incredible amount of sound. And Horson, you hear the sound too, the elvish song of morning, this just layer upon layer of harmonies, complicated and soulful and beautiful. And it builds and it builds. And then the voices cut out, Rysar, as you are in the center of the room standing before that sarcophagus, and it's just your voice singing again.
Why is that song so sad?
I suppose I come to a stop at the end of the verse, and I sort of turn around. It's the song of morning that we sing for the fallen. These elves were slain. I don't know. This building was not here today, Orson. And now it is here, as solid as the rock it is made of. I do not understand.
Well, where I come from, death is a celebration. They celebrate their lives. Should be happier.
I do not know if you have met many of my people, but we celebrate life while we live. We try to live as fully as possible, because we know in this harsh, hot, dry world, those lives will most likely be short and more than have their full of pain. But when we pass, we mourn them and we celebrate.
Maybe next time we can choose something in a major key.
With that, I say, I like your attitude. And I turn round and I want to examine this sarcophagus in the middle, Don, if there's writing on it, or the magical aura that I saw from it, if that's on the lid or coming from within, or anything I can discern about this.
Yeah, when you step up to it, there's no runes or writing, but there's art, right? Depictions of, it looks like on the side, like it looks like almost like hieroglyphs of battle, depictions of battles fought. And then on the top, the still preserved art of the woman carved into the lid itself, and she's just like you remember her before she died in your vision. She's a very proud and stoic face. She's gripping her long blade in two hands held to her chest, wearing that armor. And as you look down at the lid, the kind of sparkles, the magical energy that was hovering over top of it drops down through the lid and disappears into the sarcophagus.
Orson, you look strong. Will you help me?
What do you need?
There is magic in here, and hopefully answers that I wish to see. Will you help me?
I'll do what I can. Don't expect me to go jumping in some pit, though.
No. No. Let's have a look inside this hero's tomb. Don, I'm assuming with no religion, and with Rysar feeling drawn. I mean, I'm going to do it. I feel like I'm being called by powers greater than myself, so I don't see this as just tomb robbing for cool stuff or anything. And then Rysar sort of goes to try and start pushing the sarcophagus lid off, if possible, and sort of looking to Horson to help, if he will.
Horson's kind of shot up. All this is here to honor them, right? I'm assuming. And what are you trying to do? Pop the lid off and do what?
Horson, I'm celebrating life. Are you?
I like life, so I'd like to stay alive. And there's something off about perhaps flipping the lid off this thing and tap dancing on the corpse of some ancient elf.
Awesome. Are you an elf?
No. Do
I
look
knew
like
you were
an
going
elf?
to say that.
All right. I honestly, as a showman myself, was expecting something a little better.
Fair enough. Help me, Orson. I'm being called. This is somehow connected to my destiny. I do not wish to tap dance on the grave. I have seen this woman perish. She was destroyed by a human sorcerer in this area.
And you want to dig up her remains and...
I wish to investigate. I do not wish to plunder or pillage. I wish to understand.
Now, Rysar, are you a bartering man?
Bartering? I'm an
Yeah.
elf, yes.
Yeah, so now seems like a good time to barter. Because if we lift the lid off that and something comes out and attacks, that's not something I'm going to enjoy. Well, I might a little bit depending on the circumstances. But let's say I help you now. Can I get your word that you might help me and my crew later?
Doing anything specific?
Favor for a favor.
Is this part of that recruitment drive? But
Hey, honestly, this is totally separate.
I'm going to inside check that. Because I know I got a natural... Yeah, it's a 1.
You believe that it's like a separate thing between you and Orson.
I think I even just cut myself off halfway. I'm sort of like, because no, I trust you, Orson. Very well. A favor for a favor.
And he spits in his hand.
Oh, I always do that as well.
Yeah.
Shake that spit.
All right, let's find a good ledge. Flip this thing over.
Well, let's not destroy it. Let's just open it a bit.
Like a peep.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we'll be able to lift. Well, you might be able to, but slide. I think slide a bit. I don't wish to desecrate the grave.
Okay, so doing this gently, and he'll try to find a spot with like the most leverage that he can get, and like pop it open a little and slide.
And I'm definitely helping rather than being the lifter, because I'm not a lifter.
It is extremely heavy, the lid to the sarcophagus, a huge slab of stone that even to get your fingers in it to lift it is very difficult. But after all of this session, Bill, you can roll me athletics. You have advantage on this because you're being helped.
27, baby.
Yeah, a 27's pretty good. You are able to slide this lid slowly. You have complete control over it as you reveal what's inside. The bones, ancient, brittle, scarred, of an elf wearing ornate metal armor that's just like the armor that was depicted on the lid itself, except for it's been scorched with fire and melted in places. Held in their hands is, in one hand, crossed over their chest, is a sword. And held in their other hand against their chest, and sort of draped over top, is this large, think like a kickball-sized orb, an obsidian orb with a band of gold wrapped around it with runes set into the gold. You also see, Rysar, as you're peeking in, sand is sort of stirring through her bones and moving through her bones.
I don't know if... Can I maintain concentration? Because detect magic is 10 minutes. but I have helped move a thing, so I don't know if I lose concentration with that.
No, you still have concentration because you didn't take any damage. You didn't have to make any concentration checks. Yeah, so you see after a moment with your eyes focusing, and two, like all of the crisscrossing light, the beams of moonlight coming through the ceiling, they seem to almost be crisscrossing in such a way that they land on this dais, this center area. Through design, perhaps. So this is very lit and illuminated by moonlight, and you can see the sparkles of your detect magic settling not over the bones, not over the sand, and not the armor, not the sword, but the obsidian orb.
Do I understand anything about obsidian? Can I read the runes? Do I know anything from my meager studies about
Roll me
magic?
An arcana check, yeah.
Oh, 13 on the dice, and I think I get like +6 or something. Yeah, +6, so that's
Okay.
19.
So you recognize the runes are Elvish, and they're written in that same sort of ancient Elvish scrawl that you saw before. It's just a little bit different, but you can read it enough to understand that it's enchantment runes. And you understand that this orb is a sort of focus. It's designed to allow you to draw energy from the orb instead of from life when you cast spells. So in Dark Sun, you have to draw magic from living creatures or plants. It destroys, it drains, and that powers your spells. But there are certain objects, certain foci that allow you to sort of displace some of that and draw from yourself or from the orb. And that's what this is. It's a focus.
I would is it small enough to be able to pick up, or is it too large?
Yeah, you could hold it in two hands. It's like bowling ball sized.
Hmm.
It's pretty heavy, but it's heavy like a bowling ball.
I feel like with no religion and stuff and wanting to live life and that I'm being called, I think this is important. So I want to try and take the orb.
You heft it up, horse, and you see him pull it up out of this chamber, and that sand, that silt that's moving between the bones, and you can hear the slinking sound of it as it does so, spins up into the air as you pull back, and it takes the form. It's a vaguely humanoid form, this sandy form. It continues to swirl, and you can see two sort of spectral eyes glowing through the top of this figure over you. Horse, and you see it as well. What are your reactions?
I want to say in Elvish, I'm here. What do you want from me?
Does Horson react at all? Does he back up? Does he do anything?
He's never seen anything like this, so he's kind of after, he took the lid off. He kind of took a few steps back, maybe within 5-6 feet of Rysar, and his arms are crossed as he's like looking in amazement as this sand figure appears out of air.
The answer comes in an ethereal voice, spoken in Elvish, enough that Billy can understand, or Horson can understand. But it's definitely in Elvish, and the ethereal voice is pleasant and terrifying. It sounds like music and like grating earth and sand and ash all at the same time. It sounds optimistic and it sounds anguished. And she says, I want you to know our story. It was lost so long ago.
Tell me, please.
The spectral beams of light, the moonlight, begin to move, taking shape. And as they move and crisscross, the shadows play out on the walls and on the sarcophagi, sort of mirroring shadow puppetry, the images of the story that she tells. And she introduces herself at the start. I am Alana. I was a queen of a great nation long ago. My people and all elves and many of the other races that walked the green world were hunted and persecuted, war after war. The humans and their magic. The one who came for us was Albiorn of Dun's Witch, one of the cruelest and most powerful of the defilers. We sang the songs of our people. We laid them beneath the earth, and we waited for better days. Thousands of years, and there have yet to become better days. I wish for justice. Albiorn still walks this world. They worship him now as a king. I knew him for what he was, the slayer of elves, and he brought our people low, nearly to extinction.
How can better days be bought, or is it only vengeance you seek?
The sorcerer-kings will drain the entire world. They only wish for one thing: to become gods. You and those who serve them are just pawns and food in their great games. If the world will ever be green again, if our people will ever have a home again, if our stories are to return, Albiorn must be slayed.
Thank you, Queen. Thank you for telling me this.
The sand swirls around and lowers until the queen's eyes, her ghostly eyes, are on the level of yours. And for a moment, it's like her head disappears into her sandy body and then reappears, so that then she's looking at Horson, then disappears, reappears so that she's looking at Rysar. And she says, "The murderer has changed his name. Androponus, he calls himself now. Caesar, he calls himself now. But 2,000 years and more ago, he was the slayer of elves."
Rysar is sort of quite overwhelmed. Thank you, Queen. I know of who you speak. My name is Raisaru Athamir. Reign of the Starwing. And I believe I am here to make better times for our people. Then he sort of looks at Orson, and for all the people of this dark and sundered world.
Orson just kind of stands frozen in one of those situations where you don't know what to do with your hands. So his hands are kind of like up defensively, but like sideways. And then if that moment where the queen gazed on him, he kind of bows but sticks a leg behind his other leg, sort of like a curtsy. And then in this moment of silence, I've never met a queen before. He's just kind of like, I'm Orson. Just that one name, Orson. I'm trying to find a nickname, but it's one of those things in my cup that you don't need to know. It's a pleasure to be in your company.
Her body kind of crumbles again, and her sandy form crumbles again, and then re-stretches out so that her head is aimed towards you, and then kind of does that thing where it curves back around and looks back to Rysar. She begins to retreat, drawn back into the tomb, back into the sarcophagus, just lingering above it for a moment. And before she does, she says to both of you, Orson and Rysar, don't let our story die, and make yourselves worthy of the stories you will create for yourself. And she slinks back. Mm-hmm.
Just at this point, Rysar will sort of come to himself a bit, and then slowly but very deliberately drop to a knee and bow his head.
And Orson will see him do that and physically try to mimic that exact movement.
And as the two of you kneel, there's a little bit of that song again from the sarcophagus guy surrounding you on the walls. The sand retreats into the tomb in the center of the room, and like a large finger, it draws the lid back over top of itself, shutting it tightly with a thunk. And when it makes that sound, when the lid is shut tightly, the song cuts off. And the moonlight that's shining through the holes in the dome ceiling, it's not like it disappears, but it just gets a little bit dimmer, just a little bit. There's a little bit less light in this tomb, and you don't see Rysar anything magical anymore.
I'm gonna stand up. Just look around. Thank you, Orson. I most certainly owe you one. then I just sort of turn and start walking towards the exit.
He'll kind of collect himself after everything that he's seen, and you owe me, and then follow him out.
When you leave the tomb, the doors slide shut with a rumble and a shake behind you, and you can swear that those two statues have turned slightly closer together. As you walk between them, they're just positioned a little bit differently. And as the two of you exit the tomb back to the desert beyond, you can see the smoke and the glow of fire over the dunes where you know your camp is, where the oasis is, where the others are. It's just the two of you out here now, and the sounds of strange insects and other night beasts that wander the dunes. It's peaceful.
So she mentioned the name that I knew. How are you going to go about doing it?
I don't know if much stead should be put in the words of ancient spirits.
Is that something that normally happens? Where sand specter things will come up and talk to you?
When you're in the desert long enough, sometimes, yes. This was an adventure, was it not, Orson?
Yeah, but that queen in there is trying to get you and or us and or me to end the life of a very important person.
Well, like I said before, the future is a weave. We do with our lives what we choose to do. Let us see how our threads intertwine, Orson.
So you came here looking for destiny, and once it's shoved in your face, now you're not thinking it's such a good idea. I don't get royalty asking me for things very much, but if you're looking for destiny, that seems like a pretty obvious choice. Now, I'm not recommending you become an assassin of some royalty, but you know what I think about them? They do stupid shit with rocks.
Yes, quite. What I would suggest for your own safety, Orson, is that you do not mention the words that were spoken in there to any other living soul, or you may find your soul forfeit.
How?
The one who was spoken of is perhaps the most powerful creature in this world, although I say that before witnessing the events of tonight. He certainly is one of the most powerful rulers, and he has ears. All of the rulers have ears everywhere.
So what you're telling me is what happened in there is solely going to rest in the minds of the two people right here, who may or may not do anything with it ever again. What a sad story that would turn out to be. Now, me myself, I'm a big fan of the underdog. As you can see, going against half giants and the like. And maybe I've left this with a little bit of a calling myself.
Well, like I said, Orson, you are full of surprises. Now, perhaps it should be our little secret. For now.
I suppose years pass by, we become different people. Well, let us not forget this moment.
I don't think either of us will ever forget this moment.
I'll be counting on that right there.
I like you, Orson. And I
You're
don't
not
say
so
that
bad
much.
yourself. Not so bad yourself, Rysar.
It's kind of you to say.
Hopefully, we can help you out here. In the event we meet again, hopefully I'll have a nickname.
Elven Queen, that could be good.
Not bad. I can't appear out of sand and have glowy eyeballs, unless you can help me out with some desert mystic, whatever it is you do.
I think at that moment I just do a little bit of I sort of lean down, pick up a little bit of sand and sort of just flick it, and then with a prestidigitation, just sort of do a bit of a swirling, sort of like eyes in front of Horson's eyes, and a bit of sand swirling around, and then it just sort of falls to the ground. I'm like, huh.
And I think like at this point, as the banter goes back and forth, you've almost reached the dune. You can hear the wind music being played by Gulag and the camp beyond. The banter. You're almost over the dune. You know, like you're about to come back into view of everyone else.
And Horson will, at that last thing, get really excited, like you're showing a kid a magic trick, and he claps his hands like, "That's the shit I'm talking about right there. That is what I'm after. That's good shit. Might have to teach me how to do that someday."
I think you and I should stick together for a while. Awesome. I think I remember something about recruiting or some such.
Yeah, well, we're on our way to Tia. You can come with us, have a good time. I'll make sure nobody won't hurt you for a little bit.
Tell Taruk, I would, that you have succeeded in your task.
Yeah, all right. And he starts to like walk, like cocky walk, is getting his shoulders into it and like doing like a little celebratory dance.
Though I wouldn't bet on seeing me in the arena anytime soon.
You say that now. You just wait. Takes all types.
Yes, it does.
As the two of you re-enter camp, swaggering, especially for Horson, I think that's where we're gonna kind of like just pan away from the camp and from the two of you.
Can I say there's, and you see the cassette Castraco in the sky, one last.
That's right. Yeah, you pan up and it's still circling around. It screeches one last time. That's a perfect place to wrap up this one shot and wrap up this story. So thank you both very much. That was a bunch of fun. Got to see, yeah. got to see some things we haven't gotten to see before and learn some things. I loved a lot of things about this episode, but I want to go around and let everybody have a chance to say what they're up to. If you're doing anything cool you want folks to know about, something you enjoyed from the session, anything you want to share, and then I'll come back around and we'll talk about our sponsors and whatnot. Let's go ahead and start with our guest for the day. Hey, Billy, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. This was a blast. Toby, you're great. Don, you're great. This is a hoot. Thanks for having me on. This character was like a manifestation of like a lot of my heroes growing up. Like I wrestled in college, so he's got a severe likeness to Cale Sanderson, who is the greatest collegiate wrestler of all time, undefeated in all 4 years, and is now the head coach of Penn State Wrestling. Don, you should be proud. He's the greatest, and in combination with like a life that I've had myself of like combat stuff, there's a distinct art and fascination within. And I was really trying to let that seep through with Corson, but I couldn't ask for a better crew to play with. This was so much fun. I love creating relationships in this banter, and man, yeah, I just had a blast. If you like my stuff, you can follow me at Bill of the Forest on Twitter. I'm in on Wednesday night. I'm in a Witcher TRPG game on Tales from the Grim Twitch's channel with Lindy, who I saw in the audience in chat. And then on WebDM's channel, I'm in a Symbaroum game, which is usually Tuesdays, but that's a really fun, dark game. System is amazing. And then everything else is in quarantine. So hit me up. If you follow me, send me a message. I want to be your friend. Let's chat about stuff.
Yeah, and please do, if you haven't checked out the Witcher game that Bill's in. I think like I love the world of The Witcher. It's a great game. The lore is awesome. All of the players are very, very good. It's on Wednesday nights on Tales from the Grim. I've seen it before and I enjoy it. So definitely check that out. Bill, thank you for joining us today. And we'll have to chat about. I want to find a fun idea because I want to make sure that Horson gets a nickname. But we'll follow up after about that and see what ideas we can come up with. But I really enjoyed seeing how he interacted with the other gladiators, and what I liked about him, and this is the best kind of like fisty fighter, is like he's smart, right? But he's like brawler smart. Like he's a different kind of intelligence, and I really enjoyed watching him work through that. That was really cool to see. I enjoy the character a lot. So thanks you very much, Bill. Always great to play with you.
It's an honor.
And let's go over to Toby. How are you doing, Toby?
Very good, thank you. Pleasure playing with you, Bill. Thank you. And Rysar doesn't get on with everyone, I can tell you that for free. So although I wanted to play with a sort of lighter, softer, sort of more innocent Rysar for this prequel. So yeah, I'm really pleased that we got on, and you were very good with sort of just going with stuff, or like, and especially at the start when Rysar was like, I should pretend to be a really powerful mystic or something because they might shank me bad. And you were like, oh yeah, cool, because that was really fun. And thank you again, as always, Donathan. You're an excellent storyteller, and it was wonderful. It was kind of like, I felt, I mean, yeah, Billy got the fighting stuff, and then I felt like it was really nice to delve into the backstory of Rysar. And of course I realized that the obsidian ball was my future spell focus, but at the time I was like, I mean, I don't want to. Before I realized that, I was like, I don't want to just plunder this Elven Queen's grave just because there's a magic thing in it. But then, yeah, I mean, yeah, so it's fantastic, and I think it goes a long way to just explaining why Rysar is obsessed the way he is in the future. You can catch me on, I think this is the only live, I mean, we're still doing John Carter of Mars, Modiphius, occasionally. I think we've got maybe 2 or 3 more of those before it wraps up, but it's not regular time, so just keep an eye on the Adventurers Wanted social media pages, and also, yeah, Sam Tchaikovsky, Merila, pointed out that well, she shared a link of, well, it's one of my recent favorite characters in the Descent into Avernus, I think you called it, Don. I called it Avernus, but I always pronounce stuff wrong.
I think you're right. I think I was wrong.
You reckon? I think you're right. I'm wrong. Anyway, Descent into the Hells campaign. My accent work is shockingly bad in that, but I found it a joy to play. So yeah, check out Adventurers Wanted. See, I'm on social media, Toby Osmond. And yeah, cool. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Toby. Yeah, I really enjoyed. I love flashbacks because I love seeing what's different and finding what's different too. Because like you always have an idea of like, okay, well, 15 years ago, I think they're more innocent, or I think this is something that has changed since then. But then you always inevitably you find something that's different about your character then that you didn't know until you played, and then you take that forward with you when you go back and you play them in the present day. It's always super cool to do. I really enjoyed Rysar, getting to see a different version of him, and in some ways very similar. He's still, even with Horson, even though he kind of made a friend and a connection there, he still played things very close to his chest, and he still did not come right out and say what it is he wants. And that's Rysar, right?
Absolutely.
That's Rysar.
I take the inspiration from the I think sometimes it's a bit sort of black and white and boring to play with in D&D, like the racial stereotypes and archetypes and stuff, but sometimes it's really fun. And elves in Dark Sun, notoriously, they find it really hard to trust anyone who's outside of their tribe. Like, it's really ingrained in the culture. So I play that with Rysar, even in innocent, sort of nicer Rysar. It's just you don't just say, oh yeah, I trust you. I'll tell you I'm up for killing Androponus, but I don't know these guys. I mean, I don't know, like, who are you? So, but yeah, I was almost thinking when I was speaking to the Queen, I was like, I wonder if I can cast message and speak to her without Orson hearing. But no, it's fantastic fun. But yeah.
I like that, and I liked getting to see a little bit of the history of Dark Sun through Rysar's. Like, that's always a fun trope to play around with, is actually having some sort of time travel, whether it's a vision or something. I just think that's cool. And Dark Sun is a huge, rich world, and we've been very focused on Balic for the most part, in our campaign so far. There's so much more. So anytime we get a chance to step away and look at something a little bit different, I think that's very, very cool. So I really had a lot of fun tonight with both of you. Thank you very much. I do want to say thank you to everybody in chat for hanging out. If you're watching this on VOD, on YouTube, on Twitch, please share us. Give us a like, give us a comment. Let us know what you think. Come over to our Discord. We have a great community. It's growing in Discord, where we talk about various things that are D&D and other related games. We do have things that we're planning for the channel that you'll start hearing about soon. So please do whatever you can to help us spread the word when you see us posting, because we're a brand new channel and we want to create really cool content, and we need your help to do that. So thank you for being here tonight. And once more, thank you to our sponsors as well: Wormwood Gaming, Level Up Dice, Dark Dice, and definitely, if you see our moderators in chat, or if you see them on Discord, let them know how much you appreciate them being here too, because they look after our chats, our community, make sure that nobody is, trying to harass anybody. Everybody's playing nice, having fun, having a good time. And right now, I think pretty much everybody in the world needs a good time. So thank you all very much. As for me, I'll be here next week with more adventures in Dark Sun. I've got some other things going on. You can check out my Twitter if you're interested. I've got Game of Thrones and my original horror game later this week. I'll be streaming both of those. But other than that, I will see you all in Dark Sun next week. Thank you very much, and have a good night.
Greetings, adventurers. Today we're excited to introduce you to a new story, Dark Dice, a horror podcast that blurs the line between actual play and audio drama, where the story is determined by the roll of the dice. 6 adventurers embark on a journey into the ruinous domain of the Nameless God. They will never be the same again. One of the players is not what they seem after a doppelganger, a creature that can assume the form and voice of whatever it kills, infiltrates the team. As the players are picked off and replaced one at a time, can they figure out who the monster is before it's too late? Can you? In addition to a full-blown fantasy soundtrack with over 30 live medieval instruments and a 40-person choir, sound effects further enhance the story. Here's a quick example of what that sounds like.
The shambler with the jar of liquid inside of him.
Soren Arkwright let loose an arrow that cracked the glass, passing through the spine of the creature. The shambler still managed to maintain its forward momentum, but stumbled as it eagerly tried to bite and swipe at Soren, landing near his feet. As Rowena struck the shambling creature near Soren, she shattered the canister in its stomach, sending its liquid contents spilling to the ground. With a rush of liquid, the small fetus fell too, twitching and moving toward Rowena.
I'm gonna punt you.
Rowena launched the fetus into the mouth of the mimic with a kick.
So if you dare, gamble your sanity and subscribe to Dark Dice however you listen to podcasts, or on Spotify. Dark Dice can also be streamed at darkdicepod.com.